The air in Hearthgate Orbital Station always smelled like a compromise. It was a metallic tang of ozone from the overworked scrubbers, layered over the faint, earthy dampness of recycled water and the synthetic cherry scent pumped into the corridors to mask the smell of several thousand multi-species occupants living in quarters built for half that number. Hearthgate was a tin can clinging to the high orbit of Averine, a planet whose gravity well was convenient, but whose atmosphere was, ironically, pristine and unbreathable by most carbon-based life. The station was a nexus, a stopover, a last resort. It was also, for Nate Calder, home. And home was failing. Nate checked the seals on his daughter's filtration mask, his calloused fingers gentle against her small face. Tight enough. Mia being Mia, who was 9 years old and understood atmospheric pressure better than most adults, nodded. Her breathing was a quiet, practiced whistle through the filter. "It's okay, Dad. The Block 7 vent is just sticky again." Nate managed a tired smile. Block 7 is always sticky. He was a night shift environmental engineer, which was a polite title for a plumber who worked with oxygen conduits instead of water pipes. He knew every groan and shudder of Hearthgate's aging infrastructure. He knew which valves hissed, which junctions sparked, and which sectors lied about their parts per million count. He also knew a secret that could get him executed. Nate wasn't just an engineer. He was a warden, tucked behind his right optic nerve. Dormant, but always present, was the warden link, a whisper of archaic code, a phantom limb that could reach into the station's core operations. He could feel the spin of the gyroscopes, the thrum of the fusion core, the precise, strained rhythm of the very scrubbers he was paid to manually repair. It was a military-grade interface, a relic from a war he had deserted, and he had sworn never to use it again. But Mia's chronic asthma was a constant, cold anxiety in his chest, and Hearthgate's infrastructure was a constant, failing variable. "Okay," he said, hoisting the last cargo-netted crate onto his shoulder. "New apartment, new air." "Better air," Mia corrected, her voice tinny through the mask's speaker. "Right, better air." Their new unit was 734. It was only 3 corridors over, but it was in a newer module, one rumored to have its own dedicated atmospheric recycling subsystem. It had cost him every credit he had, plus a favor from a fast-talking housing broker named Juno Park. He balanced the crate, shifted his grip, and tapped his knuckle against the door chime. The door hissed open, not to the empty, gray-lit space he expected, but to a room already occupied. A woman stood in the middle of the small living area, surrounded by 2 simple, woven trunks. She was tall and slender, with skin the color of a deep twilight sky, faintly luminous in the dim light. Her hair was the color of spun silver, braided tightly back. She looked exhausted, her high-set Astrian cheekbones sharp with fatigue, but her eyes pupilless and glowing a soft amber were locked on him with unyielding intensity. Nate stared. She stared back. Nate said, lowering the crate. "I think you have the wrong unit. This is 734. The woman did not move. Her voice was like wind chimes, melodic but carrying a surprising resonance. "I am aware. This is Unit 734, and it is mine." She held up a data pad, displayed on the screen, in crisp, official station script, was a rental agreement. Paid in full. Nate felt a familiar, cold drop in his stomach. He set his own pad on the crate and brought up his file. "So is this," he said, turning the screen. "Unit 734, paid in full." They stood in the doorway, 2 valid contracts glowing in the dim corridor, the station's ambient hum filling the silence. "Well," Mia's small voice piped up, "this is awkward." The woman's amber eyes flicked down to the small, masked girl, and her posture softened by a fraction. Before Nate could speak, his wrist comm chimed. He slapped the activation stud. A holographic projection of Juno Park, all impossibly white teeth and frantic energy, shimmered into existence between them. Nate called her. "My man," Juno beamed, not noticing the Astrian woman. "Settling in, the new module is top-notch. Right prime air, minimal vibration. A real step up." "Juno," Nate cut him off, his voice flat. "There's someone in my apartment." Juno's smile didn't falter, but his eyes darted sideways, accessing a feed. "Ah, yes, I see. Saris Yashara, correct?" The Astrian woman inclined her head. "I am—" "Juno," Nate repeated, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. "What happened?" "Okay, look, let's not call it a problem. Let's call it a clerical opportunity." Juno's projection spread his hands wide. There was a slight porosity in the ledger system, a hiccup, a temporal echo in the transaction logs. "The point is, you both have a valid lease. The system double-booked." Nate felt the blood drain from his face. "So fix it. Give her another unit." "I can't," Juno's voice became a conspiratorial whisper. "Nate, there are no other units. Not in this sector. Not for, well, not for months. Hearthgate is at 140% capacity." "This is unacceptable," Saris Yashara said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through Juno's patter. "I was processed from intake this morning. I require this residence to activate my work visa for the hydroponics division." "And I require this residence," Nate shot back. "For my daughter's health. We are moving. Now." "And that's where we find the synergy," Juno chirped, sensing the escalating conflict. "If you both contest the lease, it goes to orbital adjudication. That's a minimum 3-week cycle. By then, the unit defaults back to the pool. You both lose it. And trust me, you'll be sleeping in a cargo bay." Nate looked at Mia, at her small hand gripping his pants leg. He looked at the peeling paint in the corridor they'd just left. 3 weeks. "Or," Juno continued, "we implement the contingency cohabitation protocol. It's right there in your contracts. Subsection 9, paragraph 4. Ledger errors. You share the space. Short term, just until I can smooth this out. And I'll cut the rent. For both of you. By, say, 30% share. Share this tiny 2-bedroom box. With a stranger. An alien stranger." "No," Nate said. The word was absolute. "I have a child. She's sick. I am not sharing quarters with anyone." "Dad," Mia whispered, pulling on his sleeve. "I understand your concern for the child," Saris said, addressing Nate directly, her gaze level. "I, however, have no other vector. The refugee barracks are full. If I do not secure this residence, I am returned to intake. Which means I am returned to the transport vessel I just spent 4 months aboard." She paused. "I will not go back." Her weariness was still there, but beneath it was a core of tempered steel. She had nowhere to go, and Nate believed her. Juno, seeing his opening, clapped his holographic hands. "It's perfect. You'll barely see each other, Nate. You're on night shift. She's on day shift at the hydroponics bay. It's efficient. I'll file the paperwork. Just give it a try. 2 weeks." The projection vanished before Nate could curse him. Nate looked at Saris. She looked at him. Mia looked at them both. "I am not moving my trunks," Saris stated. "I am not sleeping in the corridor," Nate countered. He sighed. The sound lost in the whir of the vent. He pushed the crate past the doorway, the magnetic runners grating on the floor. "Fine, but we set rules. Hard rules." Saris watched him, her luminous skin casting a faint blue sheen on the bulkhead. "I am agreeable to rules." The first rule was breached an hour later. They had drawn a digital line down the center of the common area. They had allocated shelf space in the nutrient chiller. Nate had taken the slightly larger bedroom for him and Mia. Saris had taken the smaller one, which was little more than a closet with a viewport. Nate was setting up Mia's portable nebulizer, his back aching, his temper frayed. The apartment's air was better crisper, with less of the metallic tang, but it was still recycled. Mia was sitting on her sleep mat, drawing a picture of a six-legged cat from Averine's lowlands. A scent wafted from the kitchenette. It was pungent, spicy, and deeply unfamiliar. Mia's throat-clearing tick started, a small ahem, then another. Nate turned. Saris was at the induction stove, heating a foil-wrapped brick. A thick, orange steam rose from it. "What is that?" Nate demanded. "Estrian field rations," Saris replied without turning. "Creche root and phosphor-spiced fungi." Mia coughed again. A dry, rasping sound that set Nate's teeth on edge. It's strong," Mia wheezed. "Stop," Nate said. "Rule 4, no strong odors. Her lungs can't handle it." Saris turned, a small frown on her blue features. "It is just food. The child is welcome to some. It is designed to clear the passages." She ladled a spoonful of the steaming orange paste into a bowl and stepped across the digital line she herself had demanded. She offered it to Mia. "I said stop," Nate snapped, moving between them. But it was too late. The concentrated wave of hot, spicy steam hit Mia full in the face. The girl's breath hitched. Her small cough turned into a violent, racking spasm. Her eyes went wide with panic as her airway seized. She gasped, but no air went in. It was the sound Nate dreaded most in the world, the high-pitched, desperate whistle of a full-blown attack. "Mia." He lunged for the emergency inhaler on the table. Saris looked horrified. I did not." Nate shoved the inhaler into Mia's mouth and thumbed the canister. 1 puff. 2. Mia's spasms subsided, but she was still gasping, tears streaming from her eyes. Nate glared at Saris, his whole body shaking with a mixture of terror and rage. "Get that stuff out of here. Now. Vent it. I don't care. Get it out." Saris recoiled, her amber eyes wide. She looked at the bowl, then at Mia, who was trembling in Nate's arms. Without a word, she dumped the food into the waste recycler, hit the emergency purge, and opened the small, sealed port to the outer corridor to cycle the air, flooding the room with the familiar scent of ozone and stale cherries. Nate sat on the floor, rocking Mia, listening to her breathing slowly return to its fragile normal. He heard Saris return to the room. She stood several feet away, just on her side of the line. "Her condition," Saris said, her voice barely a whisper. "It is severe." "She has chronic bronchial constriction," Nate said, his voice rough. He didn't look up. "Her lungs are scarred from an atmospheric leak 5 years ago. She can't handle particulates, or strong spices, or surprises." He expected an argument, an excuse, a defense of her creche root. Instead, Saris sank to the floor, mirroring him. She pulled her knees to her chest. "I am sorry. In my culture, heated spice is the first remedy for lung ailments. I did not consider the difference." Nate finally looked at her. The arrogance from the doorway was gone. In her place was the refugee he had first seen bone-weary, displaced, and now, deeply ashamed. He looked at Mia, who had stopped crying and was watching Saris with cautious curiosity. "Okay," Nate said, the anger draining out of him, leaving only the familiar exhaustion. "Okay, we'll write a new rule. Rule 5. All food items must be cleared by air control." Saris gave a small, jerky nod. "Air control," she agreed. It was in that moment, in the shared silence after the panic, that the digital rule set was signed. The truce had begun. The next few days were a tense ballet of avoidance. Nate would return from his night shift, the smell of ozone and solvent clinging to his coveralls. Just as Saris was preparing for her day shift, they would nod. "Shift," he'd say. "Bay," she'd reply. Mia was the bridge. She was fascinated by Saris. She liked the way her skin seemed to hum in the low light. "Why are you blue?" Mia asked her one afternoon, while Nate was trying to sleep in the next room. "It is how my people process starlight," Saris replied, her fingers deftly weaving a small, complex knot from a piece of discarded fiber optic cable. "Does it hurt?" "Only when we are away from it for too long." Nate, pretending to sleep, listened. He heard Saris teaching Mia an Astrian counting game. He heard Mia explaining the rules of Asteroid Hopper, a game she played on her datapad. He felt a sliver of gratitude, quickly smothered by suspicion. He couldn't afford trust. Trust was a luxury for people with stable housing and healthy children. His suspicion flared late on the fourth night. A station-wide alert chimed from the wall panel. Not a drill. "Attention!" a synthesized voice announced. "Air quality deviation detected in Sector Gamma. Sub-level 2. All residents. Please minimize exertion. Atmospheric team deployed." Sector Gamma. That was his sector. Mia, asleep in her cot next to his, stirred. Her breathing hitched. "Damn it," Nate whispered. He sat up, his heart pounding. Gamma 2 was a critical junction. If it failed, it could cascade, triggering shutdowns all the way to their new, premium module. He could feel it. The Warden link, usually a dull ache, sparked to life. It was feeding him data his wall panel wasn't. It wasn't a deviation. It was a critical pressure drop. A primary conduit was bleeding oxygen into a maintenance void. The deployed team wouldn't make it in time. He looked at Mia. Her breathing was already shallowing. It was psychosomatic. For now. But if the pressure in their module dipped even 2%? "No," he muttered. He closed his eyes. He didn't move a muscle. He just reached. In his mind, he was no longer in the apartment. He was in the cold, dark maintenance void of Gamma 2. He saw the schematic of the station overlaid on his vision, a glowing blue web. He saw the leak, a hairline fracture in a magnesium alloy valve. He saw the manual override, 3 decks below, which would take a repair crew 20 minutes to reach. But he also saw the auxiliary, a secondary junction, meant for fire suppression. It was old, stiff, and barely on the network. But it was there. Push, he thought. He focused his will, funneling it through the dormant interface. He felt a sharp, cold pain behind his eye, like an ice pick. He ignored it. He pushed against the auxiliary valve's digital resistance. The station's core code fought him, recognizing an unauthorized command. "I am the Warden," he whispered in the dark of his mind. "You will obey." The code yielded. In the maintenance void miles away, a meter-wide valve, coated in ice and dust, slammed shut with a percussive thud. The pressure leak stopped. The alert on his wall panel chirped. "Deviation stabilized. All clear." Nate opened his eyes, gasping. A trickle of blood ran from his nose. He wiped it away, his hands shaking. "Dad," Mia mumbled, half asleep. "Is the air okay?" Nate looked at her, his heart a cold knot. "Yeah, Mia Bean. It's okay. They fixed it." He glanced toward the closed door of Saris's room. He had broken his vow. He had used the link. And in doing so, he had just saved his daughter's life. He felt no relief, only a cold, familiar dread. The real test came 2 days later. It was evening. Nate was preparing for his shift. Mia was at the small table, finishing her science homework, a diagram of a hydroponic bay. Saris was showing her how to draw the nutrient feeders. There was a fragile piece in the apartment, a domesticity Nate hadn't realized he'd missed. Then the universe tore. It wasn't a loud noise. It was a lack of noise. A deep, sickening thump that vibrated through the deck plates, followed by the immediate, terrifying silence of the main atmospheric ventilators shutting down. The lights flickered, switched to blood-red emergency power, then flickered again and died, plunging the apartment into near-total darkness, lit only by the faint blue glow of Saris Yashara and the green status light on Mia's nebulizer. Mia didn't even have time to be scared. Her lungs, already fragile, slammed shut. She made a single, desperate sound, a choked gasp, and her hands flew to her throat. "No! No! No!" Nate yelled. He grabbed her, his hands fumbling in the dark for the emergency inhaler. "Mia, breathe. Breathe." But this wasn't a normal attack. The air in the room was already dead, stagnant, acrid with the smell of scorched wiring. "The module," Saris said, her voice terrifyingly calm in the dark. "The entire system is offline. Medical. I have to get her to the clinic." Nate was already at the door, Mia in his arms. He slammed his hand on the control panel. Nothing. The door was sealed. Emergency lockdown. "Dad!" Mia wheezed, her fingernails digging into his arm. Her face, visible in Saris's faint light, was a pale, terrified gray. "They're locked," Saris said, already moving. "The lifts will be dead. The main clinic is 20 decks down. We will not make it." "Then what?" Nate roared, panic ripping his voice raw. "She has minutes. She has minutes." "This way." Saris was at the far wall, by the nutrient chiller. Her fingers found a seam in the bulkhead Nate had never noticed. "This is an old module, retrofitted. The plumbing chase is still here." She braced herself and pulled a 2-foot square panel, hidden behind a thin cosmetic plate, grated open, revealing a dark, narrow shaft filled with conduits and cables. "What is that?" Nate gasped. "A maintenance tunnel," Saris said, her amber eyes glowing bright in the dark. "It connects to the old climate control hubs. There is a medical bay. It's close. Now. Come." She didn't wait. She slipped into the darkness. Nate looked at Mia. Her eyes were closing. Her breathing was a thread. "Hold on, baby," he whispered, and plunged into the tunnel after Saris. It was claustrophobic. The air was thick with dust and ozone. Nate followed the dim blue glow of Saris's skin, cradling Mia to his chest. He could barely fit his shoulders through the gap. "Turn left here," Saris commanded from the darkness ahead. "Follow the coolant line." "How do you know this?" Nate panted, his arms burning. "Astrians learn to read infrastructure," she called back, her voice echoing. "Where there is power, there is a path. Move faster." He scraped his shoulder against a junction box. He could feel Mia's body, terrifyingly limp. He pushed harder. They burst out of another panel, tumbling into a small, white room. It was clean, and it was humming. "It's on an independent circuit," Saris said, slamming her hand on a wall panel. A bright, clean light flooded the room. It was an old medical climate bay, designed for emergencies. A humid, pressurized mist began to hiss from a dozen vents. Nate laid Mia on the medical cot, positioning her face over the atomizer. "Come on, Mia Bean, come on, breathe." For a terrible, stretched second, nothing happened. Then, a shuddering gasp. Mia's body arched, and she took a deep, ragged, beautiful breath of the clean, oxygenated air. Her color started to return. Nate slumped against the wall, his legs giving out. He was shaking so hard he could barely stand. He looked at Saris. She was standing over Mia, her hand, pale blue and slender, brushing the damp hair from the girl's forehead. The gesture was tender, almost maternal. You saved her," Nate breathed. Saris looked at him, her expression unreadable in the harsh medical light. "We saved her. Later. Much later." The main power returned. The alarms were still ringing, a cacophony of automated announcements about the gamma sector collapse and structural instability. They were back in Unit 734. Mia was asleep, her breathing finally deep and regular, the portable nebulizer humming beside her. A fragile, unspoken trust had formed between Nate and Saris. She had saved his daughter. He owed her a debt he could never repay. But the engineer in him and the warden was screaming. A double booking, a cohabitation contingency, a system-wide atmospheric failure. It was too much. He sat at his terminal, the dim light painting his face. Saris was in the kitchenette, boiling water for tea. He told himself he was just running diagnostics. He activated the link. The pain was sharp, but he welcomed it. He dived deep, past the public announcements, past the engineering logs. He went into the core admin network. He searched for the logs corresponding to the exact moment of the collapse. He found it. The system hadn't just failed. It had been pushed. A cascade of forced overrides, initiated from a high-privilege account. It was deliberate. And then he saw it, nested inside the malicious code, almost invisible. A digital signature. An access key that did not belong to Hearthgate. Someone had tried to cripple the station. Someone had done it on purpose. Nate looked at Mia, sleeping peacefully, alive only because her alien roommate knew the station's secret passages. He looked at the closed door to Saris's room. The three of them were trapped in this tiny apartment, bound by a faulty lease and a shared moment of terror. But the apartment wasn't the trap. Hearthgate was. He closed the admin log, his face hardening. The truce was no longer about sharing rent. It was about survival. He would find the saboteur. He would find the holder of that digital signature. And he would do it while hiding the one tool that gave him the power to fight back. He would protect his daughter. And, he realized with a jolt, he would protect his roommate. The war he'd tried to leave behind had just found his new home. The fragile truce established in Unit 734 held, solidifying into a set of unwritten, then spoken, rules. The digital line dividing the common area was still visible on the floor panels, but it had become porous, blurred by necessity and the small, persistent footsteps of Mia Calder. Rule 6, Nate announced one evening as he returned from his shift. He pointed his spoon at the small, simmering pot on Saris's side of the induction stove. No boiling of phosphorescent fungi before the station's morning cycle. It smells like a sad, electrical ocean. Saris, who was inspecting a hydroponic seedling catalog on her datapad, did not look up. That sad ocean, as you call it, contains 3 times the complex carbohydrates of your synthesized nutrient paste. She paused, then added, which brings me to Rule 7. Human autobrewers should not be permitted to call that dark, heated sludge coffee. It is an insult to calibrated beverages. It's efficient, Nate grumbled, tapping the dispenser. The machine wheezed and produced a cup of the substance in question. You two fight like old people, Mia piped up from the floor, where she was arranging a set of magnetic hex bolts. We are not fighting, Nate and Saris said in unison, then exchanged a look of mutual annoyance, which only made Mia giggle. The rhythm of their cohabitation settled. Nate's night shift meant he returned in the quiet hum of the station's artificial dawn, his coveralls smelling of ozone and conductive grease. He would find Saris already awake, performing a series of slow, precise stretches in the blue-white light of the viewport. She would nod. Shift, and he would nod back. Bay, before collapsing into his bunk. He would wake in the late afternoon to the smell of Saris's strange, aromatic cooking and the sound of her patiently answering Mia's endless questions about Astrian star charts. Saris secured her position in the hydroponics division. The work suited her. The fatigue that had clung to her like a shroud in the corridor began to recede. The faint, luminous quality of her blue skin brightened, and her amber eyes seemed less strained. She brought home offcuts and specialized seedlings, rooting them in small, recycled containers that soon filled their viewport, creating a lush, green curtain against the blackness of space. Nate watched her. He was an engineer. He studied systems. And Ceres was a system he could not map. One evening, he was calibrating the atmospheric filters in their unit, a task he performed with obsessive regularity when Ceres returned from her shift. "Good cycle," he asked, not looking up from the diagnostic panel. "It was productive. We successfully grafted the Averine native spike root onto the Austrian pearl kelp. It increased oxygen output by 11%. She sounded pleased. Nate finished his calibration and turned to hand her a bulb of purified water. "Here, you look." He trailed off. She had turned to accept the water, and the movement was not the simple gesture of a coworker. She took the bulb with 2 hands, her fingers precisely placed. She inclined her head in a short, formal bow, her spine perfectly straight. It was a gesture of profound, practiced grace. It was not the bow of a technician, or even a refugee. It was the bow of someone receiving tribute. She saw him staring. She immediately broke the posture, grabbing the bulb with one hand and taking a long drink. "The air in the bay was dry," she said, her tone suddenly casual. Nate said nothing, but he filed the observation away, next to the memory of her navigating the maintenance tunnels with absolute certainty. The external pressures on their fragile new life began to mount a week later. The station's public address system, usually reserved for docking announcements and advertisements for synthetic noodles, flickered to life with an official station seal, the golden sunburst of the Aurelian Empire. A man appeared on the screen. He was handsome, severe, and wore the immaculate black and gold uniform of a prefect. His hair was dark, slicked back, and his eyes were the color of cold steel. "Residents of Hearthgate," his voice boomed, smooth and authoritative. "This is Prefect Arden Keth, your appointed station authority. As you know, Hearthgate has recently been the target of cowardly sabotage, aimed at disrupting our vital life support systems." Nate felt Ceres go still beside him. "This instability, coupled with the increasing burden on our station's resources, requires decisive action. Under the authority granted me by the Aurelian Empress," Keth continued, "I am enacting the Emergency Residency Control Act, effective immediately. We will begin a station-wide sweep of all sectors. All residents must present valid, long-term work visas or residency permits. All temporary refugee or at-risk permits are hereby suspended pending review." The screen flashed with images of Keth's private security force, the Prefect's Honor Guard, clad in black shelled armor patrolling the corridors. "This is not a punishment," Keth smiled, a reptile smile that did not reach his eyes. "It is a guarantee of security. A secure station is a productive station. Aurelian provides." The broadcast ended. The apartment was silent. Nate looked at Ceres. Her back was rigid. Her blue skin, which had been vibrant from her work, had faded to a dull, worried twilight. She was a refugee. Her permit was temporary. She was the direct target of Keth's new law. "That," Nate said quietly, "is a problem." "It is. A complication," Ceres said, her voice tight. "He can't just suspend permits. Can he?" "He is prefect," Ceres replied, turning to the viewport. "He represents the Empire. He can do as he is authorized. And it seems he has authorized himself." Before Nate could respond, a jarring, metallic shriek echoed through the bulkhead. The gravity in the apartment faltered. Mia, who was climbing onto her sleep cot, yelped as she was lifted a foot into the air before slamming back down. The contents of Nate's coffee cup sprayed across the table in a zero-gravity arc, then splattered as the artificial gravity reasserted itself, flickering violently. "Hold on!" Nate yelled, grabbing Mia. The lights dimmed to a sickly brown. An alarm began to chirp. Warning: gravity fluctuation in Sector 7. Gyroscopic alignment failing. It's Keth again, Nate hissed, his mind racing. The saboteur, Sarah said, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. He is accelerating his attacks. Nate's terminal, linked to the engineering network, lit up with frantic, scrolling error codes. The entire sector's gyroscopic stabilizer, a massive, spinning ring that kept pointing down, was entering a resonance cascade. If it shattered, it would rip their module apart. I have to get to the junction, Nate said, already moving for the door, grabbing his toolkit. The corridors will be chaos, Sarah said. You will never make it in time. The lift will be locked down. I have to... He fumbled with the door latch, but his mind was already elsewhere. The warden link flared behind his eye, hot and demanding. He could feel the stabilizer. He could feel the imbalance, the metal-on-metal scream of the magnetic bearings failing. The official channels were useless. He had to do it. Here, with her watching. He dropped his toolkit and spun back to his terminal. I'll try to find a schematic, he lied, his fingers flying across the holographic keys. Nate, what are you? Be quiet, he snapped. He closed his eyes. He didn't need the keyboard. He just needed the interface. He plunged his consciousness into the station's core. The world vanished, replaced by a torrent of glowing blue data. He saw the gyroscope, a spinning disk of light, wobbling on its axis. He saw the code Keth's saboteur had introduced a feedback loop, a tiny, malicious line of instructions that amplified the smallest vibration. No, you don't. Nate poured his will into the system. He wasn't a technician. He was a ghost, moving between the lines of code. He found the rogue instruction. He couldn't delete it. It was too deeply embedded. But he could isolate it. He built a digital wall, a quarantine buffer, diverting the feedback loop into a null space sensor array. It was a brutal, ugly fix, like using a sledgehammer for surgery. He felt the physical resistance as the station's automated systems fought his unauthorized command. He felt the cold shock of the warden link forcing its way through. The high-pitched shriek from the bulkhead dampened. The gravity, which had been flickering like a bad-tempered light, settled. The floor became solid. The alarm cut off. Nate slumped in his chair, a single drop of blood falling from his nose onto the console. He gasped, the world rushing back in a wave of nausea. He heard Mia's small voice. Dad, your nose. He wiped the blood away, his hand shaking. It's just the pressure change. Allergies. He looked up. Saris was standing perfectly still, her amber eyes fixed on him. Her gaze was not one of confusion. It was one of sharp, sudden, terrifying comprehension. You did that, she said. It was not a question. The alarm stopped. The gravity stabilized. You did that. From here. I'm a good engineer, Nate said weakly, his heart hammering. I have seen Star Wardens of the Core Fleet interface with their vessels, Sarah said, her voice a low whisper. I have never seen this. What are you? Nate Calder. Before he could answer, before he could even form a lie that she might believe, Mia's terminal chimed with a homework reminder. The tension shattered, but the question hung in the air, unanswered, vibrating with more power than the failing gyroscope. Mia was the one who stitched their fractured moments back together. Her school project, ironically, was on hydroponics. She was, by default, the bridge between the engineer and the botanist. Saris, Mia asked one evening, pushing her datapad across the table. My diagram of the nutrient cycle is wrong. My teacher says the phosphor uptake is inefficient. Saris, who had been distant since the gravity incident, looked at the diagram. A small smile touched her lips. Your teacher is correct, but it is not your fault. This is a human diagram. It relies entirely on external light sources. You are missing the glaze. The glaze. An Astrian invention, Sarah said. We cultivate a harmless bioluminescent algae. We mix it with the nutrient substrate. She touched the diagram, her blue finger tracing a new path. It clings to the roots. It absorbs ambient light, even the dim light from a viewport, and releases it directly, at the cellular level. It is a phosphor glaze. It allows us to grow things in the deep holds of colony ships. Whoa, Mia breathed. Can we make some? Nate watched, wary, as Saris's initial hesitation melted under Mia's enthusiasm. Perhaps, I have some algae spores in my personal kit. For remembrance. That night, the apartment smelled not of crèche root or burnt coffee, but of something sweet and earthy. Sarah showed Mia how to activate the dormant spores in a sugar solution. They ended up with 3 nutrient paste cakes, each covered in a faint, beautiful, pale green glow. Mia held one up. It's like eating a star. Nate found himself smiling, a real, unguarded smile. He watched Saris showing Mia how to handle the fragile cakes. He saw the loneliness in the Astrian woman's eyes, a mirrored reflection of his own. They sat in the quiet, the only light coming from the viewport and the 3 glowing cakes on the table. She's a good kid, Nate said quietly, after Mia had finally gone to sleep, her own small cake held protectively on her nightstand. She is bright, Saris agreed. They were sharing the viewport, a habit they had developed, watching the slow, majestic turn of Averine below. She has a strong heart, resilient. She gets that from her mother, Nate said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Saris was silent, inviting him to continue. Her mother, Ellen, Nate said, his voice rough. She's why Mia's lungs are so bad. She wasn't born this way. The atmospheric leak you mentioned. Yeah, 5 years ago, Sector Delta. Nate's knuckles whitened as he gripped the viewport's frame. It wasn't an accident. I told you that. It was a private contractor, Heliox Infrastructure. They were testing new bulkhead seals. They wanted to see the failure point. They bypassed 3 layers of safety protocols. The cost-benefit analysis, Saris murmured, her voice laced with a familiar cynicism. Ellen was a botanist, like you, working on the agricultural ring. The alarms were disabled. The leak it wasn't oxygen. It was a catalytic solvent. By the time the non-Heliox crews figured out what was happening, it was too late. Ellen. She sealed her lab, saved her team. But she was trapped outside. She suffocated. Slowly. He was quiet for a long time. Mia was with her, in the lab's daycare. The solvent. It got into that sealed room's ventilation. It didn't kill her. It just scarred her. Her lungs. He finally looked at Saris. Her amber eyes were soft with a pain he recognized. The official report, Nate continued, his voice cold, was catastrophic equipment failure. But I knew the chief engineer who filed the dissent. He was transferred to a mining asteroid a week later. Vanished. And Keth? Saris asked quietly. Arden Keth. He was the junior administrator who signed off on the test. He signed off on the report, too. He called the engineer's dissent unsubstantiated panic. Heliox gave him a bonus for efficient oversight. It was his first big step up the ladder. He built his career on my wife's body. So, Saris said, understanding dawning, your hunt for the saboteur. It is not just for the station. He's destroying the station piece by piece, just like he did with Delta, Nate whispered, his rage a cold, hard thing in his chest. He's going to kill someone else's family. I'm just trying to keep Mia safe. By fixing his damage before it kills us, Saris concluded. Using your gift. It's not a gift, Nate snapped. It's a curse. It's a relic from a war I ran away from. I swore I'd never use it again. But every time I do, every time I save a valve or stabilize a gyroscope, I feel it. He touched the spot behind his eye. I feel it locking me back in, and now Keth is looking for it. How do you know? A friend, Nate said, just as his wrist comm chimed. It was Juno Park. His holographic projection was jittery, the usual 1,000-watt smile replaced by a grimace. Nate, bad news. Very, very bad. Juno. I'm busy. No. You don't understand, Keth isn't just reviewing permits. He's pulling logs. Not just engineering logs. Nate. Core command logs. From the last 3 weeks. Nate's blood went cold. He's looking for anomalies. His words. Not mine. He's looking for unauthorized high-level access. He's looking for, well, people like you. What are you talking about, Juno? Nate said, his voice flat, trying to warn the broker. Don't play dumb with me, Calder, Juno hissed, his projection leaning in. I got you that apartment because I owed you for fixing my sister's atmospheric unit during the blackout. I know you're not just a plumber. There are rumors about you. About Warden-class operators hiding out here since the war. Keth is looking for a Warden's digital fingerprint. And if he finds one, Nate, they're not going to just deport you. They'll call you a terrorist. They'll hand you over to the Aurelian military. And they will take Mia. The projection vanished. Nate stood in the silence, the broker's words echoing. Every time he'd saved them the first leak, the gravity failure, he had signed his own death warrant. He had left a Warden fingerprint. 2 days later, the knock came. It wasn't the polite chime of a neighbor. It was a percussive, metallic thud that rattled the door in its frame. Prefect's authority, a rough voice shouted. Open for emergency residency inspection. Compliance is mandatory. Nate's heart seized. His terminal with his backdoor access tools, still open in a hidden partition, was on the table. He grabbed it, shoved it under his sleep cot, and kicked the dusty coverlet over it. Dad, Mia whimpered, hiding behind him. Stay back, Mia. Saris, your permit. It is in my sleeve, she said. Her voice was calm, but her luminous skin was pale. Nate opened the door. 2 of Keth's honor guard filled the doorway. They were huge, clad in matte black armor, the Aurelian sunburst gleaming on their pauldrons. They carried long, sparking shock batons. Unit 734, the lead guard said, his voice a synthesized growl. He stepped inside, his partner blocking the doorway. IDs. All occupants. Now. Nate handed over his datapad. The guard scanned it. Nate Calder. Engineer. 3rd class. Clear. The guard's visor turned to Mia. Mia Calder. Dependent. Clear. Then, the visor settled on Saris. The guard's entire posture changed. He straightened up, his tone laced with contempt. The refugee. Temporary permit. Show it. My papers are in order, Saris said, her voice even. I said, show it, the guard snapped, taking a menacing step toward her. I don't think you have the jurisdiction for that, Saris said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the guard's aggression like a blade. What did you say? Astrian? The guard raised his baton, the tip crackling. She said her papers are fine, Nate said, stepping between them. I'll file a complaint. You're not authorized. Quiet, engineer. The guard shoved Nate hard in the shoulder, sending him stumbling back. This is a security action. Do not touch him. Saris's voice was no longer quiet. It was cold, colder than space. She stepped forward, from the sleeve of her simple tunic, She produced a small, dark blue data chip. It looked like old, polished stone. She did not hand it to him. She held it up, flat in her palm. "Scan it," she commanded. The guard scoffed. "A custom chip, cute." He raised his wrist scanner, intending to seize her arm. But Saris did not flinch. He stopped, his scanner hovering over the chip. It pinged. The effect was instantaneous. The guard's scanner, which had been emitting bored, functional beeps, let out a high-pitched, terrified thrum. The guard's eyes, visible behind his visor's tint, went wide. He stumbled back as if he'd been struck. He looked from the scanner to Saris's face, his professional menace evaporating, replaced by raw, unadulterated shock. He slammed his armored fist against his chest plate, snapping to rigid attention. It was a salute Nate had never seen before, a gesture of absolute, groveling subservience. My apologies," the guard stammered, his synthesized voice cracking. "There has been a mistake. Your residency is secure. We did not know." "Now you do," Saris said. "We will not trouble this unit again," the guard said. He grabbed his partner, who was staring in confusion. "We are leaving, now." They backed out of the apartment, their heads bowed. The lead guard hit the door control, sealing it. The silence they left behind was deafening. Nate stared at Saris. Mia was peeking out from the bedroom, her eyes wide. "What?" Nate said, his voice barely a whisper. "Was that?" Saris took a slow breath, her composure returning. She tucked the dark blue chip back into her sleeve. "A clerical error," she said, her voice a little shaky. "From my old life. A high-level diplomatic clearance. I did not know if it was still valid. I assumed Keth had canceled them all." "Clerical errors," Nate said, walking toward her. "Do not make Arden Keth's personal guard bow." They looked like they'd seen the Empress herself. "It is complicated," Saris said, turning away from him. "Who are you?" "Saris," he demanded. "I am a hydroponics technician," she said, her back to him. "And I am your roommate. Let us leave it at that." But Nate couldn't leave it at that. The incident, combined with Juno's warning and the memory of his wife, had pushed him past the point of caution. He had to know. He had to stop Keth. He waited until Mia was asleep. He waited until he heard the soft, rhythmic breathing from Saris's room. Then, he went to his terminal, pulled it from under the cot, and dived into the Warden link. He bypassed his fear. He bypassed the pain. He bypassed the warnings. He was not a plumber tonight, he was a hunter. He tracked the digital signature from the first sabotage, the one that had almost killed Mia. It was encrypted, bounced through a dozen shell corporations, and buried in archived logs. But the Warden link was not a normal interface. It did not knock on doors. It moved through the station's foundation, through the raw code that existed before the user-friendly interfaces were ever built. He found the source, not a terminal, but a transaction ledger, a payment, a massive, untraceable payment, made 2 days before the first sabotage. He traced the account. It was routed from a corporate fund belonging to Heliox Infrastructure. Nate's blood turned to ice. Heliox. He pulled the corporate file, the same one he had memorized 5 years ago. And there, under the list of primary stakeholders, was a new addition, one that hadn't been there 5 years ago. A security and oversight consultant for all Hearthgate operations, Arden Keth. The plan was suddenly, brutally clear. It was Ellen's death, writ large. Keth wasn't just covering up shoddy work. He was creating the crisis. He used Heliox contractors to sabotage the station, creating fear. He used his prefect's authority to blame the refugees, his political scapegoat. And when the station was finally deemed critically unstable, the Aurelian Empire would grant the full, multi-trillion credit security, and repair contract to the only bidder with the experience to handle at Heliox infrastructure. Keth would be a hero, and he would be the richest man in the sector. Nate sat in the dark, the data burning on his holographic screen. He was shaking, but this time, it was with a cold, clear rage. "You found him." He spun around. Saris was standing in the doorway of the common area. She was not in her sleep tunic. She was wearing a dark, formal-looking robe that seemed to drink the light in the room. She looked taller, regal. "You were gone," she said, her amber eyes intense. "Your breathing changed. It becomes shallow. It is the same as when you intensely type at your console. You were using it again. We're not. She knew. She didn't know what it was, but she knew. He didn't have the energy to lie. "It's Keth," Nate said, his voice dead. "He's partnered with Heliox, the company that killed Ellen. He's causing all of it. The failures, the sabotage. It's all him." "I know," Sarah said. Nate's head snapped up. "You know." "I suspected," she said, walking into the room. "Keth's ambition is an old story in the Aurelian court. I did not know the name Heliox, but his pattern, creating a fire so he can be lauded for extinguishing it, is familiar." "We have to stop him," Nate said. "I have the proof. I can link the sabotage payments to the Heliox account." "And what will you do?" Saris asked, standing across from him. "Post it on the public network. Keth will delete it in a second. Trace your warden fingerprint, and have you in a cell before Mia wakes up. You will be a terrorist. He will be the hero who caught you." "So what?" Nate yelled, slamming his fist on the table. "We just sit here. We let him win. We let him tear this station apart and kill." He stopped, looking at Mia's door. "No," Sarah said. She sat in the chair opposite him, a queen taking her throne. "We do not let him win, but we do not fight him on his terms. We fight him on mine. Your terms. Your terms were a data chip that made a guard wet himself. I need answers. Saris, who are you?" She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw no trace of the weary refugee. He saw only power and an ancient sadness. "I am Saris Yashara," she said, "of the Aurelian Empire, and my education is particular. I know the laws Keth is breaking. Not just Hearthgate's laws, the Empire's laws, the ones he thinks protect him, and I know the people he truly answers to." "You're offering to help." "I am offering an alliance," she corrected. "You are the warden." "You have the technical access. You find the proof, not just the sabotage. Find the money trail. Find the communications between Heliox and Keth's personal office. Find the evidence that cannot be deleted, something that must be answered for." "And you?" Nate asked, his breath short. "What do you do?" "I," Saris said, her amber eyes burning with a cold fire, "will make sure the Empress herself sees it." The tiny apartment, Unit 734, had transformed. The invisible line down the common area was gone, erased by the constant traffic of a shared, desperate purpose. The living space now resembled a haphazard, sleep-deprived command center. Nate's engineering terminal was the centerpiece, its holographic display casting a shifting, complex web of blue light across the bulkheads. Across from him, Saris worked on her own datapad, the one containing the dark blue, stone-like chip. It was her key, her access to a network that existed parallel to Hearthgate's public infrastructure, a web of whispers, coded messages, and royal decrees. "I am officially," Mia announced, sliding a cup of reheated nutrient paste onto the table next to Nate's elbow. "Upgrading my title from Logic Assistant to Director of Logistics and Morale." Nate grunted, his eyes never leaving the flow of data. He was deep inside the Warden link. His consciousness spread thin, sifting through Heliox's encrypted financial ledgers. That's great, Mia beamed. Does the director get a pay rise? The director, Mia said primly, would settle for a snack that does not taste like pulverized vitamins. A valid request for the director, Saris murmured, her own eyes fixed on her screen. Her luminous fingers moved in a rapid, complex pattern, unlike any typing Nate had ever seen. When this is concluded, I will replicate a phosphor glaze cake, for morale. See, Dad, that's executive leadership. Despite the crushing anxiety, Nate felt a smile tug at his lips. This was their new normal. For 3 days, they had operated like this. Nate diving for data, Saris analyzing it through a political lens he was only beginning to understand, and Mia acting as their filter. Her 9-year-old mind, uncluttered by adult cynicism, saw connections they missed. Dad, you are looking at the wrong lines, Mia said suddenly, pointing a small finger at the holographic display. Mia, I'm tracing payments. It's complex. I know, but you are only looking at the big ones, the ones marked infrastructure and logistics. But look. She traced a finger along a series of dozens of tiny, seemingly insignificant transactions. These ones, sanitation, calibration, waste removal, they all go to the same sub-account, and they all started 3 days ago. And she tapped another screen, bringing up a public station calendar. They are all scheduled to stop, right here, on day 34. Nate stopped. He focused the Warden link on the sub-account. The transactions were small, designed to be lost in the noise of station operations. But Mia was right. They were numerous. And they were all routed to a single, anonymous vendor code. Saris, Nate said, his voice dropping. Mia found something, a payment cluster. I am running a trace on the vendor. Let me check the manifests, Saris said. Day 34. What is on day 34? Nate's fingers flew, the Warden link amplifying his search, tearing through firewalls. The vendor code was a shell. He tore that open. It led to another shell. He ripped through it. Finally, he hit a procurement order, a private order, filed through Heliox's military-grade logistics, for 500 kilograms of industrial-grade plasma accelerant. No, Nate whispered, his blood running cold. That's demolition grade. Nate, Saris said, her voice tight with sudden fear. Day 34. It is the Averine Solstice Festival, the largest gathering for the refugee community. Keth's administration approved it himself. He granted them use of the main agricultural commons. Nate looked at Saris, the horror dawning on both their faces simultaneously. The hydroponics bay, Nate finished, his stomach twisting. He is not just sabotaging the station. He is going to destroy the hydroponics bay. During the festival, Saris said, her amber eyes wide. It will kill hundreds, thousands, and the station's entire food and oxygen supply. Will be crippled, Nate said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening precision. He will blame the refugees. He will call it a terrorist act, a suicide bombing. He will get his emergency powers. He will get his mass expulsions. And Heliox will get the contract to rebuild the entire bay. It's Ellen. It's Ellen. All over again, but 1,000 times bigger. Mia's face was pale. He's going to hurt all those people just to get a job. Before Nate could answer, a high-pitched alarm shrieked from his terminal. It wasn't the station alarm. It was his own, private diagnostic. Damn it! Nate slammed his fist on the console. He is moving. Another one. A primary pressure valve in this sector's nutrient line. It is failing. He is bleeding the hydroponic system before the explosion to weaken the integrity. Can you do your thing?" Mia asked, her voice small. Nate checked the logs. "No. Keth is smart. He's monitoring. I can see his security protocols sweeping the core command. He is looking for my fingerprint. If I use the link on that valve, he will have me." "Then we must let it go," Sarah said, her face grim. "We must focus on the larger threat." "No," Nate said, grabbing his physical toolkit from by the door. "No. That valve fails. The pressure cascade will blow out half the sector's irrigation. It will flood the lower decks. People will get hurt. I am not letting that happen." "Nate, you cannot fix it from here," Saris argued. "And you cannot go out there. What if it is a trap?" "It is not a trap. It is just sabotage. And he does not think a third-class plumber can stop it." He looked at Saris, his eyes hard. "I am not a warden right now. I am an engineer, and I am going to go engineer. Then I am coming with you," she said, standing. "No. You stay here. You watch the network. You watch Mia. Tell me if Keth's guards move." "I am coming," Saris insisted, her voice leaving no room for argument. "My knowledge of infrastructure is not limited to tunnels, and you will require a lookout." Nate hesitated, then nodded. "Mia, lock this door behind us. Do not open it for anyone, not even Juno. Not until you hear my voice and my code. 0451. 0451, Mia repeated, her small face set with a terrible, adult gravity. "Be safe." The corridor was on a low-light cycle, the air heavy with the station's usual metallic tang. Nate moved quickly, his boots silent on the grated floor. Saris moved behind him, a graceful, blue shadow, her senses seeming to scan the environment in a way he could not. They reached the maintenance junction for Sector 7. Nate palmed the lock, his engineering clearance granting him access. The heavy door hissed open. The sound that hit them was deafening. A high-pressure shriek, like 1,000 dying whistles. Steam, thick with the smell of hot metal and nutrient solution, filled the room. "It is worse than the diagnostic showed," Saris yelled over the din, her hand covering her mouth. "The sensor was lying," Nate shouted back. He waded through the ankle-deep, lukewarm water, his eyes fixed on the primary valve assembly. It was a 3-meter-wide monstrosity of pipes and actuators. And from the central pressure seal, a jet of viscous, green-brown liquid was spraying across the room. "It is a total seal failure," Nate yelled, his heart sinking. "The actuator is cracked. I cannot stop it. It needs a full replacement part. That takes 6 hours. We have maybe 10 minutes before the pipe's integrity fails completely." "What happens then?" Saris asked, her amber eyes scanning the failing metal. "It explodes. This whole bulkhead goes. It will take out the power conduit right above it. Our whole sector, including our apartment, goes dark and cold. For good. Then we must evacuate," Saris said, grabbing his arm. "No," Nate's eyes darted around the room, frantic. I just need to stop the pressure." He looked at the valve, then at the access panel above it. "I cannot close it. But maybe I can clamp it." "With what?" Saris demanded. "Your toolkit," Nate ignored her. His gaze landed on a pile of refuse in the corner. Discarded conduit, panels, and bindings from a previous repair. There, he lunged for the pile. He pulled out a curved piece of bulkhead plating, about 2 feet long, coated in rust and grime. He grabbed a heavy-duty, discarded pipe clamp, its threads stripped, but the metal still solid. "Nate, that is junk," Sarah said, her voice laced with disbelief. "It is a patch," Nate grunted, wading back to the valve. He jammed the curved piece of plating against the spray. The metal screamed as the pressure hit it, nearly tearing it from his grip. I need to brace it. He tried to fit the pipe clamp, but he needed both hands for the plate. Saris, hold. This brace it against the actuator. Housing hard. Saris, without hesitation, put her shoulder to the plate, her slender frame straining against the violent torrent. The spray diverted, hitting the far wall. Nate worked with a desperate, frantic precision. He threaded the pipe clamp around the valve housing, his fingers numb from the vibration. The threads were stripped. It would not tighten. It is not catching, he yelled. Then make it catch, Saris grunted, her feet sliding on the slick floor. Nate looked at the clamp, then at his toolkit. He pulled out a small, high-intensity plasma welder. I cannot make it catch, so I will fuse it. He jammed the clamp into place, put his own shoulder next to Saris's, and ignited the welder. The small room filled with a blinding white light and the sharp, hot smell of ozone. He laid a thick, ugly bead of molten metal across the clamp's threads, fusing them to the valve housing. The metal groaned. The clamp smoked. He welded the patch plate to the clamp. He worked for a full minute, his hands steady, creating a hideous, brutal, and utterly profane piece of engineering. He cut the torch. He stepped back, breathing hard. The shriek had stopped. The spray was gone. A few tiny, insignificant drips of green liquid sizzled on the hot, newly welded metal. The patch was holding. The entire, massive valve assembly, which should have been spraying thousands of gallons a minute, was now held shut by a piece of junk metal and a broken clamp, fused together by raw desperation. Nate leaned against the wall, his arms shaking. Saris stared at the patch. She walked over and touched it, her blue fingers tracing the ugly, bubbled line of the weld. She looked at Nate, her expression one he had never seen before. It was not gratitude. It was awe. On my world, she said, her voice quiet in the suddenly near-silent room. We build to last millennia. Our structures are infused with resonant frequencies. They are perfect. If a thing breaks, it is replaced with an equal, perfect part. She looked back at the patch. We do not have a word for this. It is called a jury rig, Nate panted, or a kludge. It is ugly. It will not hold for more than a day. But it will hold. You saved this sector, she said. Not with your hidden power, but with scrap. You saved us with what was at hand. She shook her head, a small, astonished smile playing on her lips. Humanity. You are truly the strangest species. That night, the apartment was quiet. Mia was asleep, her breathing finally deep and even. The patch was holding, and Nate's diagnostics showed that Keth's network was, for the moment, quiet. Nate and Saris sat at the viewport, a silent, shared vigil. The adrenaline from the repair had long since faded, leaving them both hollow and exhausted. Averine turned below, a swirl of sterile browns and whites. I used to think about it, Nate said, his voice low, breaking the long silence. After Ellen, what I could have done, if I had used the link, if I had been there. Saris looked at him. You would have died with her, and Mia would be alone. I know, but the guilt, it does not care about logic. It just eats. For 5 years, I have just been surviving, just keeping Mia breathing. That is all. And now, Saris asked, now, I do not know. Now I am angry. Angry enough to not just fix things. To fight. He looked at her, her face cast in the pale blue light from the viewport. You live with it, too. Don't you? Her gaze dropped. Live with what guilt, survivor's guilt. You are not just a refugee. Saris, you are. You are a survivor. You are running from something you believe you caused, or something you failed to stop. She was silent for a long moment. In my culture, she said, duty is... It is not a choice. It is a binding. It is our sky. It is our ground. To fail in that duty is to cease to exist. You did not fail, Nate said, his voice rougher than he intended. You do not know that. I know what I see. I see someone who saved my daughter. I see someone who put her shoulder against a bursting pipe. That is not failure. She looked at him, her amber eyes shimmering. We are a dangerous pair, Nate called her. A man who wishes he could forget his past, and a woman who cannot. Nate's hand was resting on the viewport sill. Her hand was next to his. He watched, as if in slow motion, as his fingers grazed hers. It was a simple touch, skin on skin, his calloused, human flesh against her cool, luminous skin. A jolt, like a tiny, benign electrical spark, passed between them. She did not pull away. He did not pull away. They sat there, their hands touching, watching the world turn. Two survivors bound by a silent, shared understanding. The moment was shattered by Nate's wristcom. It buzzed, a frantic, encrypted signal. Nate pulled his hand back, the spell broken. He activated the comm. A scrambled, terrified image of Juno Park filled the air. The broker's face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. He was in a small, metallic room. Nate, you God's damned... You gotta help me. Juno hissed, his voice thin with panic. Keth knows about you. He knows. He said you are the one. Juno, where are you? Nate demanded, already on his feet. I do not know a cargo bay. No. A pressure chamber. C4 sector. C4, he said. He said you would know he wants to. He wants to talk to you. Nate. He said. Cough. He said if you are not here in 10 minutes. He is venting the gasp. Oh, gods. Nate. The air. The signal cut out. Nate and Saris stared at the empty space where the projection had been. It is a trap, Saris said instantly. It is the most obvious trap I have ever seen. I know, Nate said, already grabbing his jacket. You cannot go. He will be waiting. He will capture you. He will use your warden link, and he will kill us all. He is venting the pressure bay. Saris Juno helped me. He warned me. I am not letting him suffocate. He will kill you. Maybe. But he is in C4. I know that bay. It is an old atmospheric testing chamber. The external controls are isolated. But... Nate tapped his terminal. The internal network. It is still tied to the old core. I can get to it. If I am careful. He wants you to use the link, Saris pleaded. That is the trap, Nate. He wants your digital fingerprint. He wants the proof. Then he will get it. Nate's face was a grim mask. He grabbed his plasma welder from the toolkit. You stay here. Lock the door. If I am not back in 20 minutes, run. Take Mia. Go to the maintenance tunnel. Do not stop. Do you understand me? Saris grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. You go to C4. You get him. But you do not engage Keth. I will be on the network. When you have Juno, I will trigger a cascade failure in the adjoining sector's power grid. It will draw every guard in a 5-block radius. Use the confusion. Nate looked at her, seeing the strategist emerge. He nodded. 20 minutes. Pressure Bay C4 was in a low-traffic industrial sector. Nate moved like a shadow, the warden link a cold, thrumming presence behind his eye. He did not use it. Not yet. He saw the bay. 2 of Keth's black-armored honor guards stood outside the heavy-plated door. And in the observation booth above, silhouetted against the control panels, was Prefect Arden Keth. Nate stayed in the shadows of a cross corridor. Keth was waiting. A speaker crackled to life. "I know you are here, Warden." Keth's smooth, amplified voice echoed in the corridor. "Your broker is running out of time. The pressure is now at 50%. Such a shame. Show me. Show me the ghost in my machine, or he dies." Nate checked his comm. He sent a single, coded burst. "Now." In the apartment, Saris saw the signal. Her fingers flew across her pad, using her royal access. She did not just trigger a failure. She triggered a dozen. Lights blew out. Fire suppression systems activated. Alarms for containment breaches shrieked through the sector next to C4. The two guards at the door looked at each other in confusion. Their comms crackled. "All units, Sector C5. Containment breach. All units." One guard looked at the bay, then at his partner. They both sprinted toward C5. "A clever distraction," Keth's voice came again, unhurried. "But I am still here, and he is still dying." Nate sprinted from the shadows. He did not go for the door controls. He went for the power junction box on the wall beside it. He ignited his plasma welder. "What are you doing, fool?" Keth shouted. Nate did not answer. He sliced the welder straight through the box, severing the entire bay's power. The lights died. The observation booth went dark. The heavy magnetic lock on the bay door, its power cut, released with a heavy thud. Nate wrenched the manual wheel. The door hissed open. Inside, Juno Park was slumped against the far wall, his face a deep, sickly purple. Nate ran in, his welder still in hand. He did not go for Juno. He went for the atmospheric controls. He jammed the hot tip of the welder into the manual override, fusing the evacuate protocol into the pressurized one. With a jolt, the vents hissed, flooding the room with air. What? Keth's voice was no longer smooth. It was furious. He was pounding on the glass from his powerless booth. Nate grabbed Juno, slinging the unconscious broker over his shoulder. He ran for the door. Keth's honor guard were just realizing the distraction, sprinting back down the corridor. "Stop!" they yelled. Nate dropped Juno behind cover and faced the guards. He did not activate the link. He just raised the plasma welder, its tip still glowing a blinding white hot. "I am just a third-class engineer," Nate snarled, "here to fix a faulty pressure valve. You want to get in my way?" The guards, faced with a man wielding a tool that could cut through their armor in 3 seconds, skidded to a halt. "Get him," one said. But neither moved. Nate grabbed Juno again and retreated into the darkness of a service corridor. The welder held high. He vanished before they could muster the courage to fire. He made it back to the apartment, dragging a groaning, half-conscious Juno. The door hissed open. Mia was pale, huddled by Saris. Nate dumped Juno on the floor. "He is alive. Just needs air." Saris was staring at him, her face a mask of shock, respect, and something else. You did not use it." "I did not have to," Nate panted. "Sometimes, a high-class pipe fitter is all you need." He collapsed against the bulkhead, the adrenaline finally leaving him. "He knew," Nate said, his voice flat. "Juno said it. Keth knows you are the one. He called me Warden. How did he know?" Saris closed her eyes. The moment had arrived. The final, terrible truth. "He did not learn it from Juno," she said, her voice heavy. "He learned it from the people who are hunting me." Nate looked up. "What are you talking about?" "I am not," she said, opening her amber eyes. "A simple refugee, Nate. My clerical error chip. It is not diplomatic. It is a ward heir's signet." Nate just stared. What?" "I am Saris Yashara, Ward heir to the seventh house of the Aurelian Empire, she said, her voice resonating with an authority he had never heard. My duty is to protect the bloodline, to be the guardian of the next Empress. You are royalty. No, she said, a bitter smile twisting her lips. I am a tool, a high-value political asset, and Keth is part of a secret conclave, a faction that wants to control the throne. They tried to force me into a political marriage with Keth's own brother, to legitimize their control. She looked at Nate, her gaze unwavering. So I ran. I fled my duty. I hid myself on the most crowded, chaotic station I could find. I tried to become a hydroponics technician. The pieces fell into place for Nate, a cascade of implications. Keth, he is not just trying to get rich. He is trying to capture you. And you, Sarah said, walking to the viewport. He is trying to capture us both. A ward heir returned, and a rogue warden captured. That is a prize that would make him a god in the conclave. It would secure his power. He is not just consolidating a station. He is staging a coup. The silence in the room was absolute. The scale of it, the politics, the empire. It was too much. Nate stood up. He walked over to her. I do not care, he said. Saris turned, astonished. What? I do not care about your conclave. I do not care about your Empress. I do not care about your forced marriage. All I care about, he said, tapping his terminal, where the plans for the hydroponics bay were still displayed, is that he is still going to kill thousands of people on day 34. We stop that, first. Saris looked at him, at this impossible, stubborn human who had welded a pipe with scrap metal and faced down soldiers with a plumber's tool. We stop the explosion, she agreed, her voice firming. We save our home. And then, Nate said, his eyes hard. We can talk about yours. They turned. Mia was standing in the doorway of her room, her face pale, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She had clearly heard the last part. She looked at Saris, her small head tilted. I heard yelling, Mia whispered. Saris, are you a princess? Saris looked at the small girl. The weight of the empire, the fear, the running. It all seemed to recede. A small, genuinely tired smile touched her lips. She knelt, bringing herself down to Mia's level. No, Mia Bean, Saris said softly. Back home. They just called me. The one with too many etiquette primers. The alert was sterile, synthesized. Attention, scheduled maintenance for agricultural ring life support will commence at 2100. Expect minor atmospheric and pressure fluctuations. Please avoid sectors 9 through 12. He calls it scheduled maintenance, Nate muttered, his eyes on the holographic display in their apartment. The blue light cast sharp shadows on his face. He is polite. Unit 734 was no longer a home. It was a nerve center. Juno, still bruised but fiercely loyal after his rescue, was monitoring black market comms from a corner. Mia, her small face intense, was cross-referencing public camera feeds with the maintenance schedule Nate had pulled from the core. Sarah stood by the viewport, not looking at the stars, but at the reflection of the room, her posture radiating a coiled, terrifying stillness. Dad, Mia said, her voice quiet. They are here. The Heliox droids. 6 of them. They are not maintenance droids. They are heavy-lift cargo units. They just entered the primary bioaxis. Nate took a deep breath. He is not even hiding it. He looked at Saris. The festival has started. It has, she confirmed. The commons are at capacity. Saris, you have to get them out, now. But you cannot cause a panic. A stampede will be just as deadly. Saris nodded, her amber eyes turning to the door. I know the protocol for an orderly dispersal. It is persuasive. She paused, her hand on the door chime. Nate, you are about to become the most wanted man on this station. I am already the most wanted man on this station, Nate replied, his fingers hovering over his console. I am just making it official. She gave him one last look, a complex storm of fear, trust, and something he could only name as alliance. Then she was gone. Mia Bean, Nate said, not looking away from the screen. You are my eyes. I am going deep. You keep talking to me. You tell me what you see, no matter what. I will, Dad, she said, her voice small but steady. Juno, monitor Keth's private guard. I want to know the second they move. You got it, boss, Juno said, his voice grim. Nate closed his eyes. He leaned back in his chair. He let the pain behind his optic nerve, the cold thrum of the Warden link, finally take over. The world of gray metal and recycled air dissolved. Nate became Hearthgate. He was no longer a man in a chair. He was a consciousness spread across miles of cable, conduit, and code. He felt the hum of the central fusion core in his bones. He felt the cold vacuum of space on his skin. He felt the million tiny, overlapping heartbeats of every soul on the station. He could see, through 1,000 security cameras at once, the Heliox droids moving into the hydroponics bay, their heavy magnetic limbs carrying the plasma accelerant. And he could feel Arden Keth, a hot, malignant tumor in the station's admin node, watching, waiting. You want the Warden, Nate thought, his consciousness soaring through the infrastructure. You get the Warden. He reached out. In the hydroponics commons, Saris walked to the center of the festival. Hundreds of refugees Astrians, Xylos, displaced humans were gathered, sharing food under the warm, yellow glow of the grow lights. Music was playing. For a moment, it felt like a home. Saris found the public address terminal and silenced the music. A few people grumbled. Your attention, she said. Her voice, unamplified, was quiet, but it cut through the room like a diamond. It was not the voice of a technician. It was the voice of the ward heir. The crowd turned. By the protocol of order, 7th House, she announced, her voice resonating with an ancient, cultural authority that every species present, all subjects of the Empire, recognized on a primal level. This gathering is concluded. A maintenance cycle has been advanced. The air in this sector will soon become unsuitable. There was a murmur. Panic began to ripple. There is no danger, Saris commanded, her voice sharpening, radiating a calm that was both terrifying and absolute. There is only order. You will form 3 lines. You will proceed to exits Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon. You will move at a deliberate pace. The old will be assisted. The young will be protected. You will not run. You will walk. Now. It was not a request. The latent power in her voice, the ingrained genetic memory of obedience to a high house, took over. The crowd, confused but compelled, stopped murmuring. The panic died. As one, they turned, formed 3 distinct lines, and began to walk, calmly, toward the exits. Back in the apartment, Nate was playing the piano. The Heliox droids, simple automatons, were following a pre-programmed path. Nate began to change the path. Fire suppression, Sector 9 Alpha. Activate, he commanded in his mind. A thick cloud of retardant foam sprayed from the ceiling, dousing the lead droid. It short-circuited, its legs freezing. Ventilation doors, Bioaxis 4, lock. A heavy bulkhead door slammed shut, cutting off the path for 2 more droids. They stopped, confused, their red optical sensors scanning for a new route. Gravity plating, cargo way 3, increase by 0.5 G. The remaining 3 droids, weighed down by the heavy explosives, suddenly found their magnetic feet failing. They clanged to the metal floor, struggling under the sudden, localized gravity spike. "He is playing with them," Juno breathed, watching the feeds. "He is buying us time," Mia said. "But, Dad, there is something else. I am seeing it on your internal diagnostic. It is a wave." Nate, his mind split between three tasks, focused a sliver of his attention on what Mia was saying. What wave? Being the gravity fluctuations. From the gyro. They are not random. They stopped being random when the maintenance started. They are pulsing. It is a pattern. 113. 113. Nate's blood went cold. A shock that rippled through his disembodied consciousness. A backup. Keth was not relying on the droids. He had planted a secondary detonator, deep in the hydroponics core, and he was using the station's entire gyroscopic array to send a low-frequency, coded signal. A signal that would bypass any surface-level jam. He is trying to detonate it now. He could not stop the droids and stop the wave. The droids were a distraction. The wave was the real weapon. He let the droids go. He had to stop the signal. He could not stop the gyroscopes. The station would tear itself apart. But he could interfere. He could add noise. He could bend the wave. He needed a pulse. A massive, rhythmic pulse to counter Keith's signal. He looked, with his new, station-wide senses, at the primary coolant system. A network of pipes, 10 meters wide, pulsing with thousands of gallons of fluid every second. "Mia, I need the frequency. The exact frequency of that pulse. Read it to me." Mia's fingers flew. "It is 0.44 hertz. Steady." "Got it." Nate took control of the main coolant valves, 10 of them, in sequence. He began to open and close them, not randomly. He opened them, held them, and slammed them shut. Thump. Thump. Hiss. Thump. Thump. Hiss. He forced the station's circulatory system into a new, counter-rhythmic beat. He was pouring terawatts of acoustic and vibratory energy into the superstructure, directly opposing the 113 signal Keth was sending. He was phase-canceling a bomb detonation by playing the station's plumbing like a drum. The strain was immense. The pipes groaned. The metal screamed. The lights in the apartment flickered wildly. "It is working," Mia whispered, watching the waveform on her screen flatten, the signal dissolving into static. "It is working," in his dark observation booth. Arden Keth roared in fury. His signal was gone. His primary plan was failing. "You want to play, Warden," he snarled into his private comm. "Fine, let us play." He hit another control. "All units, all honor guard, converge on the central bio-axis. Find the evacuees. Find the ward air. And you—" He looked at a tactical map, at a single, glowing node of interference. "Special operations. You go here, to the Axis core. Find the source of that pulse. Find him. He is jacked in nearby. Take him alive." Nate needed to get to the core. He had to lock Keth out for good. He could not maintain the pulse and fight Keth in the network. He had to cut the head off the snake. He pulled his consciousness back. A painful, violent re-entry into his own body. He gasped, falling from the chair, the room spinning. "Dad." "I am okay," Nate panted, pulling himself up. "I stopped the signal, but he knows where I am, or where I am going. He is sending specialists. Saris is still out there, with the crowd." "I see her," Juno said, his face pale. She is clear. The evacuation worked, but... Oh, gods. Keth's guards. They are not going to the core. They are moving to intercept the evacuees. He is trying to take her hostage, Nate said. "I have to get to the core. From there. I can lock him out. I can shut his guards down." "You will never make it," Juno said. They are everywhere. I will, Nate said. He grabbed his plasma welder. Mia, lock the door. 0451. No, Mia said. Dad, wait. She pointed at the camera feed, the one Saris was on. Look, Saris was not running. She had seen the black armored guards approaching. She had pushed the last of the civilians through the bulkhead and had sealed it, leaving her, on the station side, alone. She was facing 6 of Keth's specialist honor guard. We have been ordered to take you. Ward Air, the leader growled, his shock baton crackling. I am not going anywhere, Saris replied. She slipped into a low stance, her hands open. It was not a brawling stance. It was the opening posture of the Kanesh Tal, the courtly combat style of the Aurelian Empire. The first guard charged. Saris did not meet his blow. She flowed around it, like water. Her hand, moving with impossible speed, did not strike. It tapped, a precise, 3-fingered tap to the guard's wrist. The guard's hand went limp, his baton clattering to the floor. He stared at his useless limb in shock. Saris's other hand snapped out, not a punch, but a rigid-fingered jab into the nerve cluster below his armpit. The guard's entire body seized, and he crumpled, unconscious before he hit the deck. The other 5 hesitated. She is a dancer, Juno whispered. She is a warrior, Nate corrected, his voice filled with awe. A second guard lunged. Saris used his own momentum, twisting, guiding his arm into a hyper-extended lock. There was a sickening, wet pop. The guard screamed. She followed it with a spinning kick, not to his head, but to the pressure point behind his knee. His leg buckled, and he went down. She was a blue, luminous whirlwind of precision. She was not trying to kill them. She was systematically, and beautifully, taking them apart. She is buying me time, Nate realized. He ran out of the apartment. Mia, lock it now. He ran for the access core, his heart pounding, Saris's impossible fight replaying in his mind. He reached the core, a cylindrical room filled with glowing conduits, the station's brain. He slammed the door and threw the manual lock. He jammed his personal interface into the primary port and let the warden link flood his senses one more time. Keth, you and me. Now. He plunged into the core command, and Arden Keth was there, waiting for him. Keth's digital presence was a black, jagged thing, armored in Heliox firewalls and Imperial access codes. They clashed. It was not a physical fight. It was a war of will, of code and countercode. Keth tried to lock him out. Nate bypassed the lock. Keth tried to reboot the system. Nate isolated the command. Keth tried to trigger a data wipe. Nate mirrored the data before it could be erased. You are good, Warden. Keth's voice echoed in the digital space. A ghost, a relic, but you are just one man. I am an engineer, Nate shot back, his consciousness weaving through the code. And you are a murderer. Nate needed the final proof. He needed Keth's personal signature. He pushed, using all his strength, breaking through Keth's final firewall. He saw Keth's private, encrypted files. And then he saw it, the access key, the digital signature Keth was using to authorize his commands. The Warden link, with its perfect, eidetic memory of the station's entire history, cross-referenced it. A file flashed in Nate's mind. 5 years old, Delta Sector. Catastrophic equipment failure. An engineering report filed by Ellen Calder. A dissenting report, filed by a senior engineer. And the final override. The bypass of the safety protocols. The command that had vented the catalytic solvent. It was signed by Arden Keth, with the exact same digital signature. The realization hit Nate with the force of a physical explosion. The rage was so total, so absolute. It nearly blinded him. It was not just a saboteur. It was him. The man who had laughed and signed a report while his wife suffocated. "I will kill you." The Warden Link responded to his rage. It was a weapon, after all. He saw Keth's command node. He saw the life support controls for the observation booth Keth was hiding in. He could do it. He could vent the air. He could give Keth the same death he had given Ellen. He could cut the oxygen, percent by percent. He wrapped his digital hands around the code. He saw Ellen's face. He saw Mia's. No. Not like this. Not in the dark. In the light. His rage did not vanish. It crystallized. It turned from a hot, blinding fire into a cold, blue-white star. He did not want revenge. He wanted justice. "You will not die in the dark, Keth. You will live in the light." He let go of the life support controls. Instead, he grabbed the entire data packet, the Heliox ledgers, the sabotage logs, the fake maintenance schedule, the plans for the explosion, and the 2 signed override commands, the one for tonight and the one from 5 years ago. Keth felt the data being pulled. He panicked. No lockdown, total communications blackout. Now, across the station, every screen went black. Every comm channel died. The public address system hissed into silence. Keth was cutting the station off from the universe, trying to bury the evidence. "You cannot hide," Nate whispered, his fingers flying across the real-world console in the core room. Keth had locked the communication grid, but Nate was not in the communication grid. He was a warden. He was in the infrastructure. He bypassed the comms array entirely. He routed his signal through the emergency power grid. He bypassed the public address network and went straight for the emergency broadcast system, the one hardwired analog system that could not be digitally shut down. He hit the execute key. On Hearthgate, every screen that had been black suddenly, violently, lit up. The screens in the corridors, the advertising panels, the tiny screens on the nutrient dispensers, the private data pads in 1,000 apartments. They all lit up with Arden Keth's face, next to the Heliox logo. They lit up with the bank transfers. They lit up with the audio log of Keth ordering his specialist to cleanse the field. And then, side by side, 2 documents appeared. The order to plant the plasma accelerant for tonight, and the order, dated 5 years prior, to bypass the safety protocols in Delta Sector, both bearing the same, verifiable, imperial signature of Arden Keth. Nate opened the microphone on his console. His voice, amplified by every speaker on the station, boomed through Hearthgate. "This is not sabotage." Nate's voice, rough and tired, echoed. "This is Prefect Arden Keth. He did this. He killed Ellen Calder. And he just tried to kill us all." The station was silent for 1 stunned second. Then, it erupted. A roar, starting in the evacuated commons and spreading, apartment by apartment, corridor by corridor. A single, unified sound of thousands of people, united in fury. The explosion had been stopped. The truth was out. In his booth, Keth smashed his console. He was trapped. He was exposed. He was finished. He snarled, activating a single, hidden channel, a channel that did not go to his guards, but beyond. "He has invoked the Warden Protocol," Keth spat into the comm. "The station is compromised by a rogue element, Conclave Mandate, Code Aurelian. Cleanse this field. Cleanse it all." Nate, pulling himself from the link, saw it on the external sensors. A new detachment of soldiers. Not Keth's black-armored thugs. These soldiers were clad in immaculate white and gold, their helmets featureless, angelic. They were Imperial Court shock troops. They were advancing on the core. They were advancing on Ceres. They were not here to arrest Keth. They were here to erase the entire problem. And then, as if the universe itself had decided the drama was sufficient, a shadow fell over the station. It was not a transport. It was not a freighter. It was a ship the size of a city. A vast, chrome and gold vessel that eclipsed the stars. It was a celestial-class dreadnought, the personal ceremonial vessel of the Empress. A signal cut through every channel, overriding Keth's lockdown, overriding Nate's broadcast. A single, clear, female voice, ancient and sharp as obsidian. Cease all hostilities. By imperial decree, the actions of Prefect Arden Keth and the response of the local warden are now under the direct scrutiny of the throne. The voice paused. The Empress Elithe has arrived. The court is now in session. We are most eager to see how the mortals propose to clean up this noble's mess. The hall of flowing light was not a room. It was a statement. It was a vast, circular chamber at the heart of the Empress's dreadnought, designed to awe, intimidate, and finalize. The walls were not walls, but cascading, interactive streams of liquid data, pulsing with the soft, golden light of the Aurelian Empire's billion-year history. The air was cool, smelling faintly of ozone and ancient, dust-free stone. In the center, on a simple, raised throne of black, unreflective material, sat the Empress Elithe. She was ancient, her form small and frail within her heavy ceremonial robes, but her eyes were twin black holes, possessing a gravity that held the entire room captive. Below her, the hall was divided. On one side stood the imperial court nobles and white gold-armored guards, their faces masks of aloof judgment. On the other side stood the accused. Arden Keth was there, not in restraints, but flanked by two towering imperial guards. He stood straight, his prefect's uniform immaculate, his expression one of aggrieved confidence. Nate Calder was there, his engineer's coveralls stained with sweat, ozone, and the faint, green trace of nutrient fluid from his patch. He was out of place, a piece of scrap metal in a fusion reactor. Saris Yashara was there, beside him. She had shed her technician's tunic and now wore the dark, formal robe he had seen in their apartment. Her luminous blue skin was pale, her amber eyes fixed on the throne. Mia and Juno had been escorted to a secure gallery, watched over by guards. Nate could not see them, and it terrified him. "We have reviewed the broadcast," the Empress's voice resonated, filling the hall without any apparent amplification. It was a voice that had given orders for 1,000 years. "We have seen the data provided by the rogue warden, and we have heard the counterclaim from Prefect Keth." Keth stepped forward, bowing low. "Celestial Majesty, I am the victim here, as is the station." His voice was a cascade of smooth, practiced regret. "This man, Nate Calder," he pointed, "is a rogue military asset, a deserter. He has used his Forbidden Warden interface to systematically destabilize Hearthgate, inciting the refugee population, a population already primed for violence. He staged this elaborate fiction, to seize control of the station." Keth's gaze swept the court. "He sabotaged the bay. He created the panic. And in that panic, he attempted to assassinate me and blame the very refugees he was protecting. I was forced to call in the Conclave Guard to restore order, before he could do more damage. He is a terrorist, Majesty. I ask for his immediate judgment." The court nobles murmured. It was a plausible story. A human deserter, gone mad, turning alien refugees against the Empire. It was neat. "And the Heliox data?" the Empress asked, her tone mild. "Fabricated, Majesty," Keth said smoothly. "Created with his warden access. He is a ghost in the machine. He can make the data say whatever he wishes. He even inserted the tragic 5-year-old death of his wife to create a motive. It is pathetic. Really." Nate started to surge forward, a raw sound of fury in his throat. "You—" A white gold guard blocked him with a glowing force stave. "Silence, mortal." The Empress's gaze shifted. It left Keth, left Nate, and settled on the third figure. The quiet, blue woman, who had not spoken. "And you," the Empress said. "You are Saris Yashara. The manifest lists you as a refugee, a hydroponics technician. Yet you neutralized 6 of the prefect's specialist guard. With non-lethal, courtly precision. Explain." This was the moment. Nate held his breath. Saris moved. She did not speak. She stepped into the center of the hall, turned to the throne, and sank to her knees. Her posture was perfect. Her head was bowed. Her hands were placed precisely on the floor. It was a gesture of absolute, formal subservience. Keth allowed himself a small, triumphant smirk. The refugee was bowing. "Majesty," Saris's voice rang out, clear and strong. "I am Saris Yashara, hydroponics technician. It is true," she paused. "I am also," she continued, her voice rising, "Saris Yashara, ward heir of the 7th House, guardian of the bloodline. And I am here to formally accuse Prefect Arden Keth, not of sabotage, but of high treason against the celestial throne." The hall fractured. The murmuring of the court ceased. There was a sharp intake of breath, a gasp, from 100 nobles at once. Keth's smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of chalk-white horror. Saris rose, not as a refugee, but as the high-ranking noble she was. She had performed the protocol of submission. Now, she was performing the protocol of accusation. You dare," Keth stammered. "She is lying. She is mad." "Am I?" Saris's amber eyes burned. Arden Keth, acting on behalf of the secret conclave, did attempt to destabilize the station. He did attempt to seize its resources through his shell corporation, Heliox. But his true crime was attempting to seize the throne itself. She looked at the Empress. "Majesty, the conclave has sought, for 10 years, to control the succession. Their final move was to force me, the sworn ward heir, into a political marriage with Keth's own brother, to legitimize their claim. My refugee status was my flight from that treason. Keth's presence here was not to manage a station. It was to find me, capture me, and complete the coup. His sabotage was merely a distraction. He has betrayed the Empire, Majesty. He has betrayed you." The silence was absolute. This was no longer about a backwater station. This was a dynastic struggle. The Empress stared at Saris, her ancient face unreadable. "You fled your duty, ward heir." "I did," Saris said, her voice dropping. "I abandoned my post, and I have lived in shame, until I saw that same arrogant treason prepared to murder thousands of your citizens. My duty to the throne, or my duty to the people I have made my choice." The Empress turned her gaze to the data stream wall. "The evidence," she commanded. The wall lit up. Nate's broadcast, which Keth had claimed was fabricated. But now, it was cross-referenced with Saris's accusation, the Heliox payments, the sabotage, the secret communications. Not about sabotage, but about locating the asset. The order for the Conclave Guard. The warden logs from Nate's console, which Imperial technicians had retrieved, were overlaid. Every action he had taken, the emergency valve patch, the gravity stabilization, the counterpulse to the bomb, they matched, second for second, with Keth's sabotage attempts. The data was not a fabrication. It was a perfect, interlocking story. The Empress looked at Nate, who was standing, stunned, by the guard. "This mortal," the Empress said, her voice carrying a strange, new note of curiosity. "This third-class plumber, while my ward heir fled her duty, and my prefect planned his treason, this human acted. He did not have our technology. He did not have our training. He just embraced the station's infrastructure as if it were his own flesh. He held it together with scrap metal and will. She looked at Keth. "And you called him pathetic." Keth was shaking, his arrogance shattered, replaced by the rat-like panic of a man truly cornered. He saw his life, his power, ending. He had one card left. The card the Conclave had given him, the failsafe. You condemn me," Keth snarled, his politician's mask falling away, revealing the monster beneath. "You sit there, on your ancient throne, and you judge me. You are all just dust." He slammed his hand onto a small, hidden device on his wrist comm, a device that was not connected to the station, but to a separate, high-orbit military network. "This station is a testament to my failure," he screamed, his eyes wild. "Then let it be my tomb. Let it be all of yours. Conclave mandate. Omega." An alarm shrieked, this one not from the station, but from the Empress's own throne. A technician in the court cried out, "Majesty, an unauthorized activation. The Orbital Defense Satellite Network. He is not targeting the ship. He is targeting Hearthgate." "What kind of defense?" Nate demanded, pushing against the guard. "It is not defense," the technician yelled. "It is a purification grid, a ring of atmospheric catalysts. He has activated them all. They are dumping catalytic toxins into the station's primary intakes. Air, all air, will be unbreathable. In 3 minutes." Keth laughed, a high-pitched, broken sound. "The Conclave will have its cleansing. You will all choke on your judgment." The Empress's white gold guards lunged, tackling Keth to the ground, but it was too late. The command was sent, on Nate's hidden wristcom. He could hear Mia's voice, small and terrified. Dad, the air. It smells funny. The line went dead. "Mia," Nate roared. "We cannot stop it," the Imperial technician cried. "The network is ancient, Aurelian built. It is locked by the Conclave's highest encryption. We cannot break it." "No," Nate whispered, looking at the data stream wall. "It is not encryption." He stepped forward. The guard raised his stave. "Stop! Let him pass," the Empress commanded. Nate walked into the center of the hall, directly onto the Imperial seal. He looked at the technician. "You cannot break it because you are trying to fight it. It is not a lock. It is a foundation, an operating system." He looked at Saris. "He is using the station's soul." "Nate, what are you doing?" Saris pleaded. Nate closed his eyes. "What I was built to do." He did not touch a console. He did not need one. He let the Warden link, the thing he had hidden, cursed, and feared, finally open. He did not just reach for Hearthgate. He reached for the ancient, billion-year-old Aurelian code that Hearthgate was built on. The Hall of Flowing Light responded. The golden, cascading data streams suddenly shuddered. They turned a deep, electric blue. Nate's entire body was enveloped in the light. He gasped, his back arching, as the interface, the true Warden link, made contact. He was no longer Nate. He was the station. He was the dreadnought. He was the satellite network. He saw the grid, a web of 20 satellites, all dumping poison. He saw Keth's Omega command, a black, jagged line of code. He pushed against it. A wall of fire slammed into his consciousness. The Conclave. They were there, their digital presence. A dozen of them, reinforcing the code. They were too strong. They were locking him out, burning his interface. I cannot, he thought, the pain blinding. They are too many. He felt his connection slipping. The poison was accelerating. "He is failing," Saris yelled. She saw the pain on his face, the blue light flickering. She saw the conclave's interference patterns on the data wall. She knew what she had to do. "Juno!" she yelled, activating her own comm, patching it to the gallery where he was being held with other civilians. "Listen to me. Get the refugees you are with. Get to the auxiliary command hub, Deck 4, Section Beta. The old one. Go." She did not wait. She ran from the center of the hall, past the stunned guards, to an archaic, secondary console at the edge of the room. The backup hub. "Ward Air," a guard shouted. "That is not authorized." "I am authorizing it," Saris snarled. She slammed her dark blue signet chip into the port. The console lit up. She saw Nate's blue-white signal. She saw the conclave's black-red fire walling him off. "I cannot fight their code," she said to herself. "But I can fight their authority." Juno and 3 other refugees burst into the auxiliary hub on the station, as Saris's command remotely unsealed it. "We are here," he yelled over the comm. "Hold your hands to the panel," Saris commanded. "All of you." She looked at her console. She took a deep breath. She placed her own hand on the glowing panel. "By the authority of the 7th House, I invoke the right of stewardship," she declared, her voice ringing with ancient, legal power. "I am the Ward Heir. This station and its people are my charge. The Conclave's authority," she focused on the red-black code, "is secondary to the preservation of life. I seize this channel." "It is not enough," the Imperial technician cried. "Their mandate overrides yours." "Her mandate does not," Saris said, her eyes burning. "But ours does. The right of stewardship requires a civilian second, a non-noble, a human." She looked at Nate's flickering signal. "Nate, listen to me. They are blocking you. I am opening a door. It is not a code. It is me. Take my hand." In his mind, in the sea of warring code, Nate felt it. A single, small, warm light in the cold. Red inferno. Saris. He abandoned his fight with the Conclave. He threw his entire consciousness, his entire will, toward that light. On the console, Saris's hand, outlined in blue light, was suddenly joined by Nate's, outlined in white. "It is done," Saris whispered. The red-black wall of the Conclave vanished. They had been locked out, their authority, countered by the combined, ancient legal right of a Ward Heir and a human warden, was nullified. Nate was alone with the satellite network. He saw the Omega command. He saw the poison. He did not delete the command. He rewrote it. He was a human. He was an engineer. He was a gardener. He did not see a weapon. He saw a tool. He saw 20 orbital dispensers. He saw a hydroponics bay that was failing. He reached into the code, and with the intuition his mother had taught him, he changed the catalyst mixture. He changed the dispersal pattern. He changed the target. On Hearthgate, the toxic, choking smell stopped. The red alarms ceased. A moment later, a fine, green-gold mist began to drift through the hydroponics bay. The dying plants, the failing spike roots, the pearl kelp. They began to unfurl. The oxygen counters, which had been plummeting, stabilized. And then, they began to rise. 10%, 20, 50, 110%. Nate had not just stopped the weapon. He had turned it into a fertilizer bomb. He had saved the station by giving it the most profound, life-giving breath of its existence. In the hall of flowing light, the data streams on the wall turned from chaotic blue back to a calm, steady gold. Nate Calder collapsed, falling to his knees, his body shaking, the link severed. He was just an engineer again. The hall was silent. Keth, slumped on the floor between his guards, was weeping. The Empress Elithe stood up from her throne. She walked down the steps, her ancient form moving with a sudden, terrible grace. She stopped in front of the kneeling, trembling human. She looked at the technicians. Prefect Arden Keth is guilty of high treason. The Conclave's mandate is revoked. Seize him. Take him to a very deep, very dark, very quiet cell. He has seen enough light for one lifetime." The white gold guards hauled Keth to his feet and dragged him from the hall. The Empress then turned and looked at the two of them, Nate, on his knees, struggling for breath, and Saris, who had walked from the console to stand beside him, her hand protectively on his shoulder. The human and the Astrian, the plumber and the princess, the ones who had held the station together with scrap metal and ancient laws. A slow, impossible expression spread across the Empress's ancient face. It was a smile. It was thin, sharp, and deeply, deeply amused. "Well," the Empress said, "this complicates the succession." She looked at the stunned, silent court. She looked at the two heroes at her feet. "Ward Heir Saris," she said, "you have found your purpose. And you, Nate Calder, you have found your power. It seems you are bound. You saved the station together. You linked your authorities. You linked your wills." She clapped her hands. A single, sharp sound that echoed like a gunshot. "This will not stand," she declared. "Such a messy, informal bond. We are a court of law, of protocol." She smiled again. "We must make it formal. I invite you both, before this court, tomorrow, at high sun. We will hold the ceremony to bind you in a formal, imperial blood oath." The hall of flowing light erupted. The nobles, so composed, so aloof, gasped. A blood oath. A mortal human. A disgraced ward heir. Bound. It was unheard of. It was scandalous. It was brilliant. Nate looked up, confused, exhausted, the word blood oath echoing in his ears. Saris's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. She stared at her Empress, who was still smiling that thin, sharp, terrible smile. "Majesty," Saris stammered. A blood oath. That is binding," the Empress finished for her. "Yes, we do so love our bindings. You will attend." She turned, her robes sweeping the floor, and ascended her throne. "The court is adjourned." The return to Hearthgate was surreal. 1 hour. Nate Calder had been a renegade engineer on his knees in the Empress's throne room, his mind fused with a billion-year-old operating system. The next, he was standing in the corridor outside Unit 734, his coveralls still smelling of ozone, holding his daughter's hand. Mia was, for the first time in 5 years, breathing without a filter mask. The air in the corridor was different. The metallic tang was gone, replaced by a cool, green scent. A genuine, living scent of chlorophyll and damp earth. Nate's fertilizer bomb had not just saved them. It had transformed the station's atmosphere, scrubbing it clean with a massive, forced bloom of life. "It smells," Mia whispered, her head tilted. "Like a garden." Nate swallowed, his throat tight. He looked at Saris, who was standing beside him. She was no longer the imposing ward heir from the throne room. She was just Saris, in her dark, simple robe, looking as exhausted and shell-shocked as he felt. The door to their apartment was unlocked. Juno Park was inside, pacing frantically. "Nate Saris, you are alive," they said, the whole court. "A blood oath. What is a blood oath? Is it as messy as it sounds, my gods? Keth is gone. They took him. The white and gold guards. They just took him." Juno, his face still a patchwork of purple and yellow bruises, finally stopped pacing and looked at them. "And the refugees, the permits, the Empress. She just issued a station-wide decree. All temporary permits are void. They are replaced. With what? Nate asked, his voice rough. Protected residency, Saris answered, stepping inside. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of the throne room. They are no longer refugees. They are citizens of Hearthgate, under the direct protection of the Seventh House. Juno stared at her. Seventh House. I thought you... Oh, who cares? It worked. He began to laugh, a slightly hysterical sound. It is over. They even gave me a new job. A new job, Nate said, finally letting himself lean against the bulkhead. Coordinator of housing. Juno beamed, his bruised face splitting in a grin. The Empress's attaché, some stiff-backed woman with a data slate. She fired the entire housing board. She seized Heliox's assets. She said the Empress demands absolute, verifiable transparency. And she gave the job to me. He looked around the tiny apartment. Which means, first order of business. I am getting you a bigger apartment. A penthouse. Something with windows that open. Do we have those? I will have them installed. No, Nate said. Juno stopped. No. Not yet, Nate said, sliding down the bulkhead to sit on the floor. I think I need to sit here, for a minute. Mia, seeing her father's exhaustion, immediately curled up in his lap, her small body warm and, for the first time, breathing with an easy, silent rhythm. Saris watched them. The human engineer, the warden, who had defied an empire, was now just a father, hiding his trembling hands in his daughter's hair. Juno, Saris said, her voice gentle. Give us the room, please. Go. Coordinate. Transparently. Right, yes. Of course, transparently. I will do that. Juno backed out of the apartment, his datapad already glowing with new housing manifests. The door hissed shut, leaving the three of them in the silence of their tiny, shared home. A blood oath, Nate said to the floor. A blood oath, Saris confirmed, sitting in the chair opposite him. You realize, Nate said, looking up, his eyes shadowed with a profound weariness, that she is just a different kind of Keth. Saris frowned. The Empress, Nate. She is a politician. Keth wanted to seize power. She wants to keep it. She saw a problem, a renegade human warden, and a runaway ward heir, and she solved it. She tied us both to her throne with a single word. Blood oath. We are not heroes. Saris, we are a solution. We are scheduled maintenance. I do not think so, Saris said softly. Do not you. She wants us bound, to this station, to her. What do you think that means for us? For Mia, I just wanted to be a plumber. Before Saris could answer, a formal chime, crisp and imperial, sounded from Nate's console. It was not a message. It was a summons, a projection, not of a person, but of the imperial seal, hovered in the air. The proposal of the Empress Elythe, a synthesized voice, announced, by decree, the instability of Hearthgate is deemed a failure of singular, corrupt administration. You got that right, Nate muttered. To prevent a recurrence, to honor the bond forged in crisis, and to secure the future of this station, the Empress proposes a new governance, a Warden Compact. A what? Nate asked. The Warden Compact, the voice continued, will divide authority. Political, cultural, and interstellar governance will fall to the returned ward heir, Saris Yashara. Technical, infrastructural, and internal security governance will fall to the human warden, Nate Calder. You will rule Hearthgate, together, as equals, as one. The seal glowed brighter. This compact will be the legal framework that is finalized by the blood oath, awaiting your acceptance. The projection vanished, leaving only a single, glowing accept icon hanging in the air. Nate stared at it. Rule. She wants me to rule. He stood up, walking away from the icon, away from Saris. He ran his hand over the bulkhead, over the patch panel where Saris had first led them into the tunnels. No, he whispered. Nate, Saris said, rising. No, he said louder, turning to face her. She does not understand. She does not know what she is asking. That thing, the link. It is not just a tool. It is a weapon. I ran from a war. Saris. I ran because I was good at it. I was good at turning off life support. I was good at making things break. I was good at hurting people. From a distance. Just code. His voice broke, the terror of his past rising up. For 5 years, I have kept that monster in its cage. I only used it for Mia, and then for the station. But every time, I felt it. It felt good to have that much power, to play the station like a piano, to crush Keth's code. He looked at his own hands. She is asking me to hold that power every day. What happens when I have a bad day? What happens when some new politician gets in my way? What happens when I decide that efficiency is more important than people? What stops me from becoming him, from becoming Keth? He was shaking. It was the battle he had been fighting long before he met her. The fear that the power that had saved them would inevitably be the power that consumed him. Saris walked over to him. She did not touch him. She just stood in front of him, her amber eyes searching his. I do, she said. Nate stopped. What? I stop you, Saris said, her voice simple and absolute. And you stop me. That, I believe, is the point of the compact. She looked at his hands, the ones he saw as weapons. You are not Keth, Nate. Keth used his power to break things, to hoard, to hurt, to gain. I have watched you. From the first day. You saw a dying, fractured station, and you fixed it. She gently touched the plasma welder still sitting on his workbench. You fixed a bursting valve, with scrap. You faced down soldiers, with a tool. You did not use the link until you had no other choice. And when you had Keth at your mercy, when your rage was so total, I could feel it from my console. You did not kill him. She looked up at his face. You did not use your power to create a tomb. You used it to create a garden. You are not a warrior. Nate called her. You are an engineer. You are a gardener. The technology does not define the user. The heart defines the user. And your heart. It is a plumber's heart. It fixes what is broken. Nate stared at her, the words cutting through his fear, settling his racing pulse. He looked at Mia, who was watching them, her eyes wide. He looked at Saris, this impossible woman who had seen the worst of him, the most dangerous part of him, and was not afraid. He let out a breath he felt he had been holding for 5 years. A plumber's heart. Huh. A deeply stubborn, Saris said, a small, weary smile touching her lips. Infuriatingly courageous, plumber's heart. The accept icon was still glowing. 2 days later, Hearthgate threw a party. It was not an official ceremony. It was a spontaneous, chaotic, and joyous explosion of relief. The Empress, in a move of stunning political savvy, had declared a day of refounding and had opened the station's reserves. The celebration was held, naturally, in the hydroponics bay. It was transformed. The fertilizer bomb had worked miracles. The air was rich and sweet. Massive, glowing green-gold pearl kelp now hung from the ceiling. The spike roots, once brown and brittle, were a vibrant, deep blue. Children were running through the aisles, laughing, breathing in the clean, powerful air. And for the first time, there was no refugee section. Astrians with their luminous skin danced with the six-limbed Xylos. Humans shared nutrient cakes with species Nate did not even know the names of. Nate, Saris, and Mia stood on a small, raised platform, looking out over the crowd. Nate wore his clean coveralls. Saris wore her simple tunic. They were the most powerful people on the station, and they looked like they had just gotten off shift. Juno, acting as master of ceremonies, tapped the public address. Friends, neighbors protected, residents of Hearthgate. A roar went up from the crowd. Protected residents. The words were magic. We are here because of two people, Juno shouted. Two people who fixed this place. Two people who saw a bully and did not back down. Two people who live in 734. The crowd laughed. I am not good at speeches, Juno said, suddenly emotional. But there is someone who is. He knelt. Director of Logistics and Morale. The floor is yours. Juno held the microphone out to Mia. Mia, who was not wearing her mask, not even carrying it, stepped forward. She looked at the hundreds of faces. She seemed impossibly small. She took the microphone. Hi, she said. Her small voice echoed through the vast, green cavern. The crowd went utterly silent. When I was little, Mia said, my mom told me that this station was a lifeboat, that it kept us safe from the dark. But then, she got sick, and I got sick. And the lifeboat was broken. The pipes were broken, and the air was broken. And our family was broken, too. Nate felt his eyes burn. He felt Saris's hand find his, gripping it tightly. I was scared all the time, Mia continued, her voice clear. I was scared of the air. I was scared of the alarms. I was scared my dad would not come home from his shift. She looked at Nate, and then at Saris. But then, a new person came to live with us. She was blue, and she was very, very bossy. A ripple of laughter from the Astrians in the crowd. Saris smiled, her eyes shining. My home has two people in it now. Well, three, counting me. But it is not broken anymore. Because my dad, he fixes the pipes. And Saris, she fixes the hearts. Mia looked out at the crowd, her face shining with a simple, profound truth. I am not scared anymore. Our air is fixed. Our home is fixed. Welcome home. She handed the microphone back to Juno. The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats. Then, a single Astrian technician began to clap. A human engineer joined in. Within seconds, the entire bay was filled with a thunderous, deafening applause that went on and on. Nate knelt, pulling Mia into a fierce hug, burying his face in her hair. You fixed my heart, too, Mia Bean, he whispered. He looked up, over Mia's shoulder. Saris was watching them, tears streaming freely down her luminous blue cheeks. He held out his free hand. She took it. That night, they stood before the console in their apartment. The accept icon was still glowing. A blood oath, Nate said. It sounds permanent. It is, Saris replied. It is a binding of purpose, of will, of life. In the eyes of the Empire, it is stronger than marriage. It means, what is mine is yours. What is yours is mine. Your burdens are my burdens. Your daughter is my daughter. Nate looked at Mia, asleep in her cot, her breathing easy and deep. She wants a political alliance, Nate said. She wants to bind the human warden to her throne. Yes, Sarah said. That is what the Empress wants. But what do you want, Saris? Saris met his gaze. I want, what Mia said. I want to fix what is broken. The station. The system. Our family. I do not want to be alone anymore. Nate. And I do not want you to be. Nate looked at the glowing icon. He thought of the war. He thought of Ellen. He thought of Keth. And he thought of Saris, her shoulder against a bursting pipe, her hand in his. Okay, he said. Okay. Okay. But not for her. Not for the Empress. For them. He nodded toward the sounds of the celebration, still faintly echoing from the hydroponics bay. For Hearthgate, we accept the compact. We accept the alliance of heart and responsibility. He reached out, his hand hovering over the icon. Together, he asked. Together, she said. She placed her hand over his. Together. They pressed the accept icon. The ceremony was to be held the next day, at high sun, in the hall of flowing light. They were summoned an hour early. This time, there was no court, no guards, just the Empress, waiting for them on her simple throne. You accepted, she said. It was not a question. We accept the compact, Nate said, his voice firm. We will be wardens for Hearthgate. Good, the Empress said. The station needs you. The Empire needs this station. It needs a model of cooperation, a human, and an Aurelian, side by side. She looked at Nate. You may wait in the antechamber. Warden Calder. The ward heir and I have protocols to discuss before the binding. Nate looked at Saris, hesitant. It is all right, Saris said. I will be there in a moment. Nate nodded, bowed stiffly, a gesture that was still foreign to him, and walked out, the heavy doors hissing shut behind him. Saris stood alone before the Empress. You have done well, child, the Empress said, her voice softer than Saris had ever heard it. You fled your duty, yes, but in doing so, you found your purpose. I just wanted to help, Majesty. You did more than help. You validated my gamble. Saris frowned. Majesty. The Empress smiled that thin, sharp smile. She leaned forward, beckoning Saris closer. Saris approached the throne, her heart pounding. The Empress leaned in, as if sharing a secret of the state. That apartment, the Empress whispered, her voice barely audible. Unit 734. Yes, Majesty. The double booking. The clerical error. Juno said it was a ledger glitch. Juno, the Empress said, her eyes twinkling with thousand-year-old mischief, believes what the system tells him to believe. It was not a glitch, child. It was a test. Saris felt her breath catch. The conclave was rising, the Empress continued to whisper. I knew I had a rogue warden hiding on Hearthgate. I had to know. What was his heart? Was he another Keth, hungry for power? Or was he something else? So, I activated the Oracle Shard. A small test. I pushed a runaway, high-value asset directly into his path. I forced you into his tiny, broken home to see if the human would shelter you or betray you. Saris was stunned. You sent me to him. I sent you to be tested, the Empress corrected. But the Oracle Shard, for all its power, it failed to predict one variable. What variable? Saris whispered, her mind reeling. You, the Empress said, her smile widening. It sent you to test him. It never occurred to me, or the Shard, that he would also be testing you. The Empress leaned back. You both passed. Now, go. Your warden is waiting. This alliance of heart and responsibility. It is a very good place to start. Sarah stood there for a second, the weight of the revelation settling on her. The entire thing, the shared room, the rules, the creche route, the fight. It was all a design, but the outcome, that was all theirs. She turned. She walked toward the antechamber doors. Through the translucent crystal, she could see Nate's silhouette, waiting for her, pacing. Just a man, a plumber, a warden. Her warden. She smiled, her heart full, her eyes bright with a secret she would keep. For now. She pushed the doors open and walked toward him, ready to be bound. The great doors of the antechamber hissed open. Nate, who had been pacing a rut into the polished crystal floor, looked up. Sarah stood there. The light from the hall of flowing light streamed behind her, catching the silver in her hair and the amber of her eyes. She looked lighter. The ancient, crushing weight of her duty, the shame of her flight, it was gone. She was just Cirrus, and she was smiling. A small, secret, knowing smile. "You okay?" Nate asked, his voice rough. "What? Protocols." "The Empress," Sarah said, walking toward him, "is far more complicated than I ever knew." She looped her arm through his. "She is a micromanager, on a galactic scale." "So, she is a politician," Nate grumbled, but he let her lead him. "She is an Empress," Sarah corrected, her voice laced with a new, wry humor. "It is like being a politician, an engineer, and a very, very old grandmother all at once." They stepped into the hall of flowing light. This time, it was full. The entire Aurelian court was assembled, a sea of nobles in shimmering, formal robes. But they were not the only ones. On a raised dais to the left, in a place of honor, sat the new Hearthgate delegation. Juno Park was there, wearing an ill-fitting but clean formal tunic, his datapad already glowing. Beside him sat Mia. Mia was wearing a simple blue dress that Saris had produced from her own trunks, one that matched her luminous skin. She was not wearing a mask. Her hair was brushed. She looked, for the first time, not like a patient, but just like a 9-year-old girl. She beamed at Nate, waving frantically. He felt his heart seize, and he waved back. In the center of the room, on the imperial seal, a high altar had been erected, holding a single, glowing crystal chalice. The Empress Elithe stood beside it, not on her throne. She was not wearing her heavy robes of state, but a simpler, ancient gown of woven, silver-blue fibers. She looked less like a ruler and more like a high priestess. "They are here," the Empress announced, her voice filling the silent hall. "The Wardens of Hearthgate." Nate and Saris walked the long aisle, their footsteps echoing. Nate felt the stare of 1,000 aliens, 1,000 nobles. He felt like a fraud, a plumber in a palace. He gripped Saris's arm, and her hand covered his, her skin cool and steadying. They stopped before the Empress. "We are here to formalize the Warden Compact," the Empress said. "To bind these two souls, one of Aurelian blood, one of human will to the fate of Hearthgate, to each other." She raised her hands over the chalice. "This is the oath of blood, a binding of purpose, of shared authority. It is the most sacred, unbreakable vow of service in the Empire. Once taken, it cannot be undone." She looked at Nate. She looked at Saris. "Are you prepared to take this oath to bind your life, your will, and your power to the station, and to each other, for all your days?" Nate looked at Saris. Her eyes were clear, steady, and fixed on him. This was it, the compact, the alliance of heart and responsibility. "I am," Saris said, her voice ringing with formal power. "I am," Nate said, his voice rough but firm. "Very well," the Empress said. "Then let the—" However, she interrupted herself, holding up one frail hand. A murmur went through the court. "An oath of service," the Empress said, a sharp, calculating glint in her ancient eyes, "is a political tool. The conclave, though broken, still has roots. They will see this compact as a temporary measure. They will wait. They will plot. They will seek to undermine you." She looked at Saris, then at Nate. "A bond of service can be legally debated. A bond of life cannot." Nate frowned. "Majesty, you just said it was unbreakable." "Oh, it is," the Empress said, almost cheerfully. "But politics is the art of finding exceptions. We cannot allow for exceptions. Not with Hearthgate. Not with this new, fragile alliance. The station must be protected. Your union must be sacrosanct, unassailable." She smiled. "Therefore, I propose we amend the ceremony. A simple compact is not enough to silence 1,000 years of political maneuvering. A dynastic bond, however, that they will understand." She tapped the chalice. "I propose we combine this oath of blood with the oath of union. I invite you, here, now, to be married." The hall exploded. The carefully composed nobles did not just murmur. They gasped. They shouted. A marriage a human to a ward heir. It was beyond scandalous. It was profane. Nate's head spun. Marriage. He looked at Saris. Her face was not one of joy or shock. It was pale. A sudden, terrible, familiar fear had entered her eyes. Her luminous skin had dimmed. He saw her hand, the one not holding his, tremble. He knew that look. It was the look of the refugee in the corridor. It was the look of a woman who had spent her entire life as a political asset, a tool, a high-value pawn to be married off to secure a coup. And here was her Empress, her savior, doing the exact same thing, forcing her, for the good of the station. Nate's confusion vanished, replaced by a cold, protective rage. He had not come this far. He had not fought a station and an empire, just to watch her be forced into the one thing she had run from. He let go of her arm, he turned, and he faced the Empress of 1,000,000,000 stars. "No," he said. The hall went so silent. Nate could hear the hum of the dreadnought's core. The Empress's eyes narrowed. "Warden, Calder, you, refuse." "I refuse this," Nate said, his voice level, gesturing to the altar. The court. "I refuse your amendment. I refuse this dynastic bond. You are doing exactly what Keth tried to do. You are forcing her into a political marriage." "I am protecting her," the Empress countered, her voice rising. "I am protecting you both. This is the only way." "You have been planning this," Nate said, the pieces suddenly clicking. Saris's secret smile. The micromanager comment. "That secret protocol you discussed with her. This was it. Was not it." Saris looked at him, shocked. "Nate, no, she told you this was her plan?" Nate asked, his heart sinking. "No," Saris said. She told me about the apartment." Nate stopped. "The apartment. What about it?" Saris looked at the Empress, who was watching them now with a keen, unsettling curiosity, as if she were a scientist watching an experiment reach its final, critical phase. "Majesty," Saris said, Perhaps you should explain. All of it." The Empress looked at the stunned court. She looked at Nate's furious, protective stance. She looked at Saris's plea, and she laughed. It was a light, clear, amused sound. It was the most terrifying sound Nate had ever heard. "He accuses me of being Keth," the Empress said to the hall. "But he is..." Right. I am a politician. I do what is necessary. She turned her full attention to Nate. You are correct. Warden Calder. I have been managing this situation from the beginning. She leaned forward. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, there was a conflict, a tragedy. We call it the blackout. It tested our faith in our allies. We began to wonder about the younger species, about humanity. Were you truly ready, or were you all just Keths in waiting, hungry for power? So, she continued, I commissioned a test. I used an oracle shard, a piece of ancient, predictive technology. I needed to find a human, one of value, one with a good heart, buried under pain. The shard found you, Nate Calder, a rogue warden, hiding on a broken station, his heart sealed in ice, his only purpose, his child. Nate stared. You knew about me. I have known about you for 2 years, the Empress said. But I needed to test your heart, to see what would break it open. So I set the parameters for the shard. Find me. A catalyst. Her gaze shifted to Saris. The shard identified my own ward heir, fleeing her duty, as the perfect catalyst. She was running from a forced political marriage. She was desperate. She was my test. Saris's hand flew to her mouth. You did not just know I fled. You let me. I did more than let you, child, the Empress said. I guided you. I ensured your refugee transport was routed to Hearthgate. I ensured your permit was filed. And I pushed the housing coordinator, a delightful, malleable man named Juno Park, to assign your new, approved permit to Unit 734. The full weight of it hit Nate. The double booking. The clerical error. It was you, Nate whispered. The whole time. You stuck a princess and a plumber in a 2-bedroom apartment, just to see what would happen. Precisely, the Empress clapped her hands. It was the ultimate test. The Oracle Shard predicted a 32% chance you would sell her to Keth for your daughter's medical care. It predicted a 61% chance you would terminate each other in a dispute over the nutrient chiller, and a 7% chance that you would find common ground. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile this time. It seems the shard severely miscalculated the human variable. It can predict politics. It cannot predict a father's heart or a plumber's stubbornness. Nate stood there, his mind reeling from the scale of the manipulation. He looked at Saris. He looked at Mia. He looked back at the Empress. He let out a long, slow breath, and he half smiled. So, he said, shaking his head, you are not just a politician. You are a cosmic matchmaker. The Empress's eyes twinkled. I prefer to call it preventative maintenance for destiny. Destiny, Nate said. He turned away from the Empress. He turned away from the court. He faced Saris, and Saris alone. The hall of flowing light, the nobles, the throne. It all faded away. There was only her. She is still doing it, Nate said softly, only for her to hear. She is still managing. She thinks this marriage is her final move, the end of her test. I know, Saris whispered, her eyes fixed on his. She does not understand. No, Nate said. She does not. He took both her hands. They were cool, steady. Forget her, he said. Forget them. Forget the compact and the blood oath and the oracle shard. Let us finish this. Our way. The way we started. Back in 734. He dropped to one knee. A new gasp went up from the court. This was not protocol. This was not anything they understood. A human, kneeling, not to the Empress, but to the ward heir. Saris, Nate said, his voice rough, but clear. When I met you, I was broken. My home was broken. My heart was broken. I was just surviving. You came in, and you were bossy, and you smelled like weird fungi. And you saved my daughter. You put your shoulder against a bursting pipe. You saw the monster in my head, and you were not afraid. He looked up at her, his heart in his eyes. I am not a politician. I am not even a very good warden. I am just a plumber, and I love you. I do not want an alliance to protect a station. I want a partner. I want you. He fumbled in his coverall pocket. He pulled out a small, metal object. It was not a ring. It was a single, magnetic hex bolt from Mia's toy set. I am not asking you to accept a blood oath, he said. I am asking, Saris Yashara, will you co-sign the lease permanently? Saris stared at him. The cosmic matchmaker. The oracle shard. The test. The Empress thought she had written this story, but she had only set the scene. Nate called her. He had just written the ending. Tears streamed down her luminous cheeks, but she was smiling. A bright, brilliant smile that lit up the hall. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. She knelt, pulling him up into a fierce kiss, right there, in the center of the imperial seal. The court erupted. It was chaos. It was joy. The Empress watched them, her hands on her hips, her plan utterly, beautifully, and perfectly derailed. She had wanted a political binding. She had gotten a love story. Well, she declared to the hall, her voice booming over the cheers. It seems they have amended the amendment. This is acceptable. Let the oaths be joined. As one, Nate and Saris, laughing, turned to the altar. They made their vows. Not the ones the Empress had written, but their own. A promise to fix what was broken. A promise to listen. A promise to rule. Not with power, but, as Saris had insisted, with compassion. A promise to always clear new foods with air control. The aftermath was orderly. Arden Keth was tried. It was a public trial, broadcast across Hearthgate. The evidence was irrefutable. His victims, the families from the Delta Sector leak 5 years ago, were given the floor. Nate spoke, not as a warden, but as a widower. Keth was found guilty of high treason and murder. He was sentenced not to death, but to life, rebuilding the infrastructure he had tried to destroy, on a barren mining asteroid, without any tools. Helioc's infrastructure was seized by imperial decree. Its assets, its accounts, its contracts, all were nationalized. The Empress, in her final act of preventative maintenance, did not give the funds to the Empire. She placed them in a new public trust, managed by a joint board, the Hearthgate Community Fund. Juno Park was made its first administrator. His first act was to issue full, unconditional reparations to every family affected by Keth's crimes. Hearthgate blossomed. The station, once a symbol of decay, became the model for the new human-Aurelian alliance. The fertilizer bomb had created an ecosystem. The hydroponics bay was no longer a bay. It was a forest, a vast green and gold jungle, humming with life. The air so rich and pure it was piped, unfiltered, to every deck. It was there, 6 months later, that the new wardens were working. No, Nate said, wiping grease from his cheek. If we reroute the secondary coolant line through the new root bed, we can increase the thermal efficiency by 20%. And, Saris added, looking up from her datapad, It will also heat the soil for the new Averine spike kelp. That is, that is clever. My warden. I am just a plumber. My ward heir, he said, and kissed her. A sound made them look up. It was laughter, clear, bright, and effortless. Mia called her. Her face flushed, her hair flying, was running through the hydroponics forest. She was in a game of tag with 3 other children, 2 human, 1 a small, luminous Astrian. She ran past her father, her breath coming in easy, happy gasps. She did not have her inhaler. She did not even own one anymore. She laughed again, the sound echoing through the green, vibrant living station. Nate watched her go, his heart too full for words. He felt Saris's hand find his. A mundane father, a royal exile, and one very sharp Empress had mended a tear in the universe with a rusted switch, a bright oath, and a courageous love.